So, for the new listener, what is Bru Time? I describe Bru Time as a relaxed conversation podcast exploring what it really means to live your life through honest conversations with people who choose more. What does that mean? Have a listen and find out. But first, we need to do some sponsor readouts. Now we've got a new sponsor to kick things off, Conqueror's Motorcycle Apparel. If you've been on tour with me, you'll know all about them. So this podcast is powered by Conqueror's Motorcycle Apparel, a biker's clothing shop built by bikers, run by bikers, for people who actually ride. No corporate nonsense, no guessing games, just riders who know their kit inside and out. Walk through the door or jump online and you'll get nothing but 5-star service. The kind where someone actually listens, knows the gear, and won't flog you rubbish just to make a sale. For an independent shop, the range punches well above its weight: helmets, riding gear, casual wear, and the bits you didn't know you needed until a proper biker pointed them out. And if you're shopping online, here's the kicker: use Fisters10. Yes, Fisters10 at checkout for 10% off, because good gear should come with a bit of respect. Conqueror's Motorcycle Apparel, built by bikers, backing bikers. You can check out their website at conquerorsapparel.co.uk, or if you're down near St Leonard's on the south coast of England, pop along to the shop, stick your head in and say hello. As always, a huge shout out to all of you over in the clan, over on Patreon, patreon.com/TeapotOne. I keep saying this, folks, but literally I could not do this without your support. The YouTube millions certainly are avoiding me. So with people like you over in the clan, my tours, this podcast, merch, everything like that, that's what allows me to keep a roof over our heads. And we've built a pretty special little community there in the clan. We do rides throughout the year. We do some live streams. There's meetups. Check it out. Patreon.com/TeapotOne. See if it's your thing. You also get early access to my chicken strips tours, and you get first preference for the questions in this podcast. So thank you very much to all of you that get involved there. As always, if you're enjoying the podcast, tell a mate. Just tell them about it, share it, liking, subscribing, commenting, whether it's on the socials, the YouTube vids, or on the podcast platform, wherever it is that you listen. That really does have such a positive impact now on the algorithms and all these different platforms. That is what they respond to. So if you're enjoying it, please just engage, give us a comment, a like, a share. Let people know about Bru Time. Right, enough of that. Let's crack on with the chat. Right, folks, welcome back to Bru Time. This week we've got Simon Josey from the Real Riders podcast. How you doing, Simon?
I'm good, thanks, Bruce. How about yourself?
Yeah, tickety-boo, pal. Tickety-too. Tickety-boo. I'm loving being back. This is my second one back now, and love it. I've missed this. I really have missed it.
I started listening to it today, but it's I have not finished it yet, but I will in the coming days.
Yeah, it's had some good feedback today, so thank you everybody that's taking the time to drop a message or a comment on YouTube. It's been great. It's been great. So Simon, first off, do you have a tipple of choice for this evening?
Oh, look, I knew you were going to ask this, and I sort of had something planned. I was thinking, okay, the thing to do would be to have a bottle of Kolsch or several bottles of Kolsch, which is the local brew here in my part of Germany. It's the beer that comes from Cologne. I like it. It's quite a light beer. It's a really good summer beer, I would say. And you typically drink it in this really sort of cute little glass. But I'm kind of having a bit of a dry January.
No bother.
And probably a dry February. And it's not because I had a big Christmas or anything. I had a very light Christmas. But I'm going to be on stage at the end of February, and people are going to have cameras, and I do not want to look like a fat bastard, to be honest. That's the honest
my
truth.
priorities as well, Simon, obviously.
Yeah.
No problems, no worries.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got a drink of any choice, doesn't need to be booze.
I do. I have some water, which it's, this could be the most boring podcast you've recorded yet because I'm just drinking water. But I tend to think I'm great when I've had a beer, but I tend to probably be actually much better when I haven't.
Ignorance is bliss, Simon. That's what I live by.
Yeah.
Anyway, Slime, cheers to your health.
And to you too.
Beautiful. Right, so Simon Josey, this isn't your life, but tell us about your life. What's the story? What has brought you to where you are and what you've been up to?
How long have you got?
As long as you want.
Okay, so observant listeners will have noticed that I'm not British. I do have a Antipodean accent. Originally from New Zealand, born in the late 60s, which puts me at about 58, I'm told. I had lived most of my life in New Zealand up until 1998. School, work, university, met my girlfriend who then became my wife later on. So quite a normal New Zealand upbringing, I would say. Not fully rural. Okay, some people might be sniggering about that in the New Zealand context. Yes, we do have a lot of sheep.
Mate, I'm Aberdonian, so don't worry about it.
So small town upbringing. Grew up in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. Had spent a bit of time living in Canada before that for 4 years with my parents in the sort of the early 70s. But
whereabouts in Canada were you? Sorry to interrupt.
British Columbia, in Kelowna, which is
beautiful.
Yeah, it's right in the sort of the wine growing stone fruit district of Canada, of BC. So yeah, it's nice. And I was lucky enough to go back when I was 18. Because I had memories of the place. But when I went back when I was 18 and thought, shit, this house that my parents built. I mean, we lived there for 4 years, and in that time, my parents bought land and built a house, which I still think is amazing, considering what little things I've done in my own life. But I went back when I was 18, and I thought, wow, this house is really quite small compared to my memories. But of course, I was 4 years old when we left, or no, wow. I would have been 6 actually when we left Canada. Yeah. So we were there for a very short time, but Canada was always sort of a big part of our life. Even after when we went back to New Zealand, we had a lot of Canadian friends come and visit us, etc., and stuff like that. I mean, when I went to Canada when I was 18 after I'd finished school, so it was a sort of a bit of a gap year thing, and I went to work for Radio New Zealand when I came back from that trip. That was sort of 2 months in North America. And I worked at Radio New Zealand for a couple of years as what we were called studio operators, which was sort of a less fancy way of calling us sound engineers. And I wanted to get into sound engineering. I thought I want to, be a big music sound engineer and record bands and all that kind of stuff. And even within Radio New Zealand, that was quite difficult to get into. I mean, it was difficult to get the job in the first place, but it was difficult to get into the music recording side. And what I found, though, is that I really enjoyed the live radio, and that was both on the commercial side and the non-commercial, because back in those days, Radio New Zealand was, it had both commercial and non-commercial networks. And I just loved the live radio. You went into work, you didn't quite know what was going to happen, whether it was a news program or some sort of light entertainment or sport on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, sport on a Saturday afternoon was just great because you've had all these games going on, all these reports coming in, and you just, news bulletins. It just didn't stop in like a 6 hour or an 8 hour shift, which is blow by. And each week was different. And I just absolutely loved that job. But after 2 years, I realized I'm never going to make any money at all. It was quite poorly paid, great people, great job, but I was just like, I couldn't even afford to buy a car. That's when I got into motorcycling, because that was the first sort of transportation I could buy was a motorbike. And I did it for 2 years, and then I walked away and I went off to university. And I did 3 years of a sort of a history, politics, philosophy, sort of an arts degree, right? And then after 3 years of doing that, I thought, what do I want to do? Do I want to do a master's, or do I actually want to do this other thing, which I'm really interested in, which is kind of strange, but I really enjoyed electronics. And so I actually went off and trained as an electronic technician. So I'm really Jekyll and Hyde, right? I've got this arts degree, which I really love doing, but in some ways I'm kind of practical as well. I'm not an electronics engineer, but I'm an electronics technician by training as well. I've got a piece of paper that says I can do this. It's been a long time since I picked up a soldering iron, but in theory, I still know how to bias a transistor. So
who doesn't, Simon? Who doesn't?
Well, exactly. I mean, doesn't everyone? Yeah. So I did that for 2 years. So I did sort of 5 years of formal education, and then because of this time, this was in the mid 90s, shall we say, and of course, what happened in the mid 90s was mobile telephony took off. Everyone started getting cell phones, right? And the big technology at that time that was coming through, which was the newer technology, the digital technology, was the GSM networks. If you still remember the old, basically it's called 2G. We talk about 5G now. So the old GSM networks were 2G, and I happened to get a job working for this. The provider of a 2G network, a GSM network in New Zealand. And that was great, though I wasn't perhaps such a good engineer. And everyone would go, well, that's your bloody, arts degree. That's why you're not such a good engineer. But anyway, I knew how things worked more or less, and I could fix things given enough time. But the great thing was that the network that we ran in New Zealand was all built with Nokia equipment from Finland, the big, everyone thinks of Nokia as the old mobile phones. Yeah. But on the infrastructure side of the network, that was also Nokia as well. And even to this day, everyone's forgotten about Nokia mobile phones. But actually, the Nokia infrastructure business is still in place today. And the thing about being trained on the Nokia equipment is then the whole world sort of opened up to me. And I'd finished university in Polytech with a bit of a student debt, not a massive one by these days standards, but a bit of a student debt. And I thought, okay, 2 things I'm going to do. I'm not going to buy a car until I've paid this off. Second thing, I'm going to try and work overseas and take advantage of this training that I've got. And initially I thought I would go and get a job in the UK. I sort of had some jobs lined up in the UK, in Bristol, in fact. But just before I left to go to the UK, and I should point out the reason I was able to go and work in the UK was because my maternal grandfather is English born, and there was this connection. I could basically legally live in the UK and work in the UK under that arrangement. But just as I was about to go and leave for the UK, basically I got a job offer in Beijing in China. And I thought, okay, wow, we'll do that one. And so I went to Beijing, China in June 1998 with a backpack. And within 6 months, I was just loving it. It was so cool. I mean, there was so much money in that industry at that time. And there were so many young expats in China as well. So they were just desperate for people to go and work there. And so heaps and heaps of people were there from all over the world. A lot of Europeans, obviously a lot of Finnish people, but Danes and just people from everywhere. And it was such an exciting time because we were just rolling out these massive networks. And I was living in this really interesting country, which was by the month it was developing. Things would change by the month. Just new stores would pop up, and it was just such an exciting time. And so after 6 months, I convinced my girlfriend, now my wife, I said, oh, you got to come. This is so cool. And so she walked away from this really big job that she had because I managed to sell it to her. I said, look, it's just amazing here. And we ended up living in Beijing for 5.5 years.
Wow.
We had 2 boys. So my sons weren't born in Beijing because it was much cheaper actually to fly home to New Zealand to have them, believe it or not. So they were born in New Zealand, but they grew up in China for those first 5 years. My eldest, by the time we left, he had reasonable Chinese. I would try and speak to him in my limited Chinese, and he would just like, what are you talking about, you idiot? But he would talk to Chinese people in Chinese, and he was like 5 years old. It was amazing. It was just amazing to watch. Yeah.
They're just a sponge, aren't they, at that age?
Yeah.
Just take it in.
Yeah. So we did that, and then my contract ended in China, in Beijing. But luckily, the next contract lined up, but that was in Taiwan. Now, I didn't know much about Taiwan before we went to Taiwan, but Taiwan is sort of, the whole Chinese-Taiwanese relationship is really interesting because all the people that Mao basically kicked out of China, I guess they're called Republicans, they escaped to Taiwan. And that's why there's always been this tension between basically mainland China and Taiwan. But the funny thing about Taiwan, there's things that we noticed. Really friendly, really safe place to live. Unless you've got like billions of dollars, no one's going to try and kidnap you because it's not worth their bother, right? So it's a very safe, friendly place. Taiwanese people are really helpful. If your car breaks down, they'll help you. It's a really interesting place also to live after you've lived in mainland China, because in some ways Taiwan is more Chinese than China, because it doesn't have the influence of the Communist Party like in mainland China, and therefore all the cultural practices that were not outlawed, particularly the religious cultural practices, so the temples. I mean, you find temples in mainland China, but no one's really using them, whereas in Taiwan, they're really, really active. And just, I remember I like to tell the story that whenever we were doing a proposal, like a customer of ours would issue an RFP, a request for proposal, and we would respond to that. So our response before it was delivered to the customer would be a big physical thing. Before it was delivered to the customer, we would take it to the temple and bless it at the temple, and then deliver it to the customer. Yeah, that never happened. Never happened in mainland China. Yeah.
I'm surprised by that, because I just assumed China would be like Japan, deep-rooted tradition and beliefs. But when you think about it, obviously the new Chinese regime it goes against that traditional Chinese history, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you can find it if you dig
Chinese,
it out.
But you know what I mean? Yeah.
But you can dig around and find those practices. There's a lot of superstition also in mainland China, just as there is throughout the whole Chinese cultural experience, the numbers, lucky numbers. I mean, when I left...
Colours.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's hilarious. When I left Beijing, at least 2 people came up to me and said, "Oh, Simon, can we have your mobile number?" I said, "Well, yeah, whatever, I'm leaving." Why? And they said, "Well, because it's got all these lucky numbers in it." I said, "Okay, fill your boots." Yeah. So, they were scrambling to grab my number because they said, "Oh, it's a good number." Yeah, so we'll have that, thanks.
I find that sort of stuff fascinating. Do you? Like what started that, and why is it? That must have come about for a reason. And what is that reason? It's like stereotypes. Stereotypes aren't always right, but stereotypes arise because there seems to be a common denominator for whatever that is. Yeah.
I don't know what the origins of it are, but I can tell you that China is, it was our first expat posting. It was my first overseas work posting. And there's something about your first posting, you make a real effort to try and to handle it. And the thing about China was there was very little English at that time. And so if you stepped out of your door, you had to be able to speak a little bit of Chinese. And so you start with your taxi Chinese first of all. You pick up your ability to be able to tell the taxi driver where to go, because we weren't driving. At least for not for the first three and a half years, we weren't driving. So... And we were not encouraged to drive either. Nokia said, "No, please don't drive." But, with the young babies and things, you'd like, I think we'd rather risk driving rather than risk the taxis. But the thing is, you went outdoors, you had to be able to speak Chinese, shopping, taxis, eating in restaurants. And sort of that was the level of Chinese that you started with. but it's just such a fascinating country. There's so much that we do not appreciate. And one example that was given to me was, quite often we'd have a meal with a customer. And in many Chinese restaurants, you may have seen, they have this big round table.
Yeah.
We all sit down at that big round table, some of us, from Nokia, and some of the customer people as well. And you're not aware of it initially, but later on you find out that where everyone is sitting is very carefully orchestrated. So as the ignorant Westerner, you'll just go in there, there's a seat, I'll go and I'll sit down there. And both the customer people and even the Nokia Chinese people, will all rearrange themselves, not into a hierarchy, but to make sure that, certain people are sitting next to each other. And it's all done very discreetly. There's no big drama about it. But the Chinese people completely know what's going on. They just this is their whole way they live. It's called sort of, I've heard people refer to it as contextual. So in the West, particularly here in Germany, I can tell you we live by rules and laws and things. And it's like,
they love a rule in Germany, don't they?
Yeah,
they do love a
tell
rule.
me. Yeah. So it's like you and I, when we're driving on the road, and this is a little bit simplistic, but okay, I'll do it for the British situation. So you'd be driving on the left-hand side of the road, regardless of you're always going to be driving on the left-hand side of the road. Well, in China, and again, this is a bit of a simplification, depending on the context, maybe you're driving on the left, maybe you're driving on the right. It depends on the situation and the context. And that's a little bit like how the whole culture works. It's very much these complicated arrangements and situations that you're in at the time sort of determines your behavior, not rules, not laws. But getting your head around that. I mean, I was there for 5.5 years, and I'm not a master because my Chinese level was taxis, shopping, the restaurant. I think by the end I could go to the bank, which is a bit scary if you think about it. I could do a transaction in Chinese in the bank, but yeah, there's all these sort of levels of sophistication that are just well beyond me. I know there are things about China which are not so great, and I think even the Chinese would probably admit that. But it is an extremely rich and fascinating culture. And the food, you probably, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you probably think, okay, I know what Chinese food's like, but actually within China, you think it's such a bloody big country. The different cuisines that they have throughout the whole country is just immense. What really fascinated us is that when we were in Beijing, which is in the northeast, and they have a lot of potatoes and things that, like what I would call, particularly in wintertime, good comfort food, good solid muck, pork and chicken and potatoes and onions, lots of onions, stuff that we immediately recognize.
Yeah.
But if you go to somewhere like Sichuan, which is famous, or Hunan, famous for its hot food, but yeah, particularly Sichuan, very, very spicy, burn your mouth out. And then even further south, down sort of where Hong Kong is, around the bottom there, that's probably where most of the food that we know in Chinese takeaways in the Western world, because a lot of those people are the people who migrated away from China were from the southern areas, and they took their cuisine to the rest of the world. But there's all these other areas or cuisines in mainland China that people are not necessarily aware of. It's just fascinating. We loved it. It was sad to leave, but we had to move on. That the contract was up, and so we did 2.5 years, or no, 2 years in Taiwan, which was also good. Crazy snakes, though. Oh my goodness, crazy snakes in Taiwan. And
Why's that?
Well, the thing is, the Japanese during the Second World War, they were doing some poison. Apparently, they were doing some poison, like lab work, and they were trying to extract the poison from these snakes for military reasons, you know. I don't know whether they were going to use it for gas or whatever. And as the war came to an end, they just let all these snakes go. And so,
Blimey.
yeah. So that there's some really nasty snakes in Taiwan. I didn't go camping, but my wife and the boys, they went camping once, and they went to this campsite, and they were setting up their tent, and they looked and they saw this white powder all the way around their tent site, and apparently it was lime.
Oh, right, to keep the snakes away.
Yeah, the snakes will not cross the lime strip apparently. So this powdered lime was all the way around to keep the snakes out. You know, bugger that. Because in New Zealand we don't have snakes at all. So I do not come from a snake culture. So
That's I mean, I realise how ridiculous this sounds, but, you know, Australia does. Australia has massive pythons and all sorts, don't they?
Yeah.
And I was going to say, well, you're New Zealand's just over the water, but it's not, is it? It's like 500, 600 miles over the ocean. Isn't it something like that?
It's basically 3-hour flight.
Jeez, that's crazy.
So, you know, it's not like,
More than that, then.
do you want to pop into Sydney on your way home from work? It's none of that. You know, it's a long way to you look on the map. If you can find one where they actually have New Zealand on the map, it's a long way to Australia. So I think that's kind of cool in some ways because, you know, it's a little bit difficult for me to say, but actually Australia is a pretty awesome place to visit because of the geography is very different from New Zealand. All the animals, the nasty bugs, and they've got spiders and snakes, you know. It's all completely different to New Zealand. Yeah.
I've never been to New Zealand. I want to remedy that one day and go for sure. I've got family in, my Uncle Al lived, I think he's still sort of Hawke's Bay region, somewhere around there, I think. So. I'd love to go and see that. But I've been to Australia and I'm heading back there next month actually with Chicken Strips. We've got a tour there. So
of course.
Really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to that. Yeah. So did you do much traveling within mainland China itself then? Or did you stick to where you were living?
A little bit. So I've been to Shanghai a couple of times for work, but we've also been, Tina, that's my wife, she and I went there for a sort of a long weekend once or maybe a week. So went to Shanghai. We went out to Qingdao. You may have heard of Qingdao beer, or it's spelt Tsingtao here, but it's actually spelt or said Qingdao, which is on the coast. It's where they did the Olympic sailing when they had the Olympics in Beijing.
Okay.
It's nowhere near Beijing. It's a long way away. It takes a day to get there by train. But it's interesting because the beer comes from there. And it used to be like, you know how Hong Kong was, or Shenzhen was I can't remember the name, but basically the English settlement and in China. And then Shanghai, there were also colonial settlements. Well, Qingdao, which is further up the coast, that also had a German colonial settlement. And so there's some old German architecture there and the beer factory. So that was a pretty cool place to go, but it was a work trip in that the whole company went for a long weekend there. They put everyone on a train and we all went to Qingdao. This is when we had a lot of money in the company. And the number of colleagues who were on that trip, local colleagues who'd never seen the sea before, was amazing. Just like...
What, actual Chinese people had never seen the sea?
Never seen the sea. First time they'd seen the sea and were quite uncomfortable because there weren't a lot of people around on the beach because if you're used to being surrounded by people the whole time and suddenly you're in an environment where you're on a sort of a desolate beach or an empty beach, it's like, whoa, this is really out of my comfort zone. Whereas as New Zealanders, you know, it's like we go to the beach, we do not want anyone within 100 meters of us.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like heaven. Nobody there. Yeah, but yes, please. That would be great.
Yeah. So
I've always... sorry, go on.
Oh, so that was Qingdao that we went to, but I was also lucky enough to spend about 10 days in deepest, darkest China with a couple of colleagues, a couple of Danish guys who were really keen photographers. And I went along with them with a video camera and I basically made a little short film about them taking pictures in this area of sort of very poor area of China over Chinese New Year. So it was sort of early or late winter, so it was a bit bleak, but there are a lot of Chinese minorities. So when we talk about Chinese people, the Han minority is the dominant minority in mainland China, but there are other ethnic minorities, much smaller groups, and there are a couple of these minorities living down in this place called Guangxi, I think it is. Guangxi. You may have heard of Guangdong, which is where Shenzhen is, close to Hong Kong. So
right.
Guangdong means Guang East, and Guangxi means Guang West. So it's a little bit further west of Guangdong, and Guangxi. I can't remember the other. There's another state there, basically, or province. But that was amazing because it was very, very much out in the middle of nowhere. It was really cool.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to travel. Well, I still would like to travel in China, but I remember when I was doing the big trip. Sorry to bring that up. Even now, you can't just enter the country, can you? And just travel through alone. You have to be accompanied by a government official for the whole way. And I think it's not just one. I think there's like 3 or 4 officials that you have to have with you. So you have to pay for the official or officials plus their transport and basically all their expenses, as well as the visa fee to get over there.
Yeah.
So it works out as something ridiculous like £10,000 or £15,000. It's a crazy amount of money. Yeah. So what people do is, it doesn't matter. I think it's the same whether there's one of you or 15, 20 of you, whatever it is. So people tend to just buddy up together and then go en masse through. But they sort of dictate where you go and what pace you're doing at, what you see, who you speak to. And that never really appealed to me. So I've not done it.
Yeah. So when we were living there, foreigners were not allowed to own motorcycles. So there were a number of my European colleagues who bought sidecars because sidecars were defined as cars. And so they had the old sort of, okay, everyone's going to hate on me because I don't know exactly, but sort of that Ural style, old World War II, where there was the Chinese copy of a Russian copy of the German original, blah, 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 whatever. And that's what a number of them used to ride around Beijing in the summertime. But I did have a Finnish colleague who was really keen on motorcycling, and somehow he got a bike, and it was all, I think he had a Chinese girlfriend, and this is the whole contextual thing that I was kind of referring to earlier. If you know someone and you grease the palm in a certain way and the relationship is good, and maybe it's not even about money or anything transferring hands, it's about maybe the fact that you're a foreigner and you have a relationship with them that brings them some credibility or something. Whatever, however, however that relationship works, he was able to actually ride with a couple of other Europeans, I think motorcycles, all the way back from Beijing to Finland, to Helsinki. So,
wow.
Strictly speaking, that was not legal. And this would have been 2000, probably 2003, 2004, about that time. So quite a long time ago. Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to have to look into that. What a journey that must have been. I mean, that's pretty much long way around sort of time, isn't it, that they did it? And it's before the massive overland, what's the word? Cool. It became fashionable, didn't it, after Long Way Round? So everyone started doing it. And because everyone started doing it, borders got easier. The roads and networks were all developing anyway at that point.
Yeah.
So that'd be a really interesting journey too. Did they document it at all?
You know what? I'm pretty sure, unfortunately, because I've tried to get in touch with Erkki, that was the guy who did it, Erkki Pera, and I've tried to chase him up, messaging him on Facebook, on LinkedIn, no response. And I was looking last year to try and locate him, and I think, unfortunately, he might have been a COVID victim.
Oh, no.
Which is like, because he and I got on really well. I mean, I worked with him a lot. And I was, at that stage, I'd gone off, well, I hadn't gone off motorcycles, but it's like, okay, I put motorcycles out of my life. So, oh yeah, I'm interested in motorcycles, but it's not part of my life at all. And so I never really talked to him about it. And I'm just like, oh, I mean, I wish there was a story. I wish they had maybe they did, but I don't know how to get hold of it. You know, he didn't have family. He was a single guy. So I don't know, that story's maybe gone with him.
Yeah. I'll have a dig about those, see what I can find. That would be an amazing story if there is some sort of document.
I think China is just an incredible place. It would be so cool to travel around China on a motorcycle, because the geography is very, varied. You've got real deserts in the west, and the culture is completely different there. And then you've got gorgeous sort of mountain areas in the south, and then quite interesting coastal areas. It goes up to, well, I guess it's kind of almost subtropical in the south, and then in wintertime it's bitterly cold up the north. So it would be amazing to travel around, particularly not on the main roads, but on the smaller roads.
Yeah. Mongolia's always held that sort of mystical thing for me. Mongolia was somewhere I was planning on going to, and just one reason or another, I ended up not going into Mongolia. I'm gutted. It's something it's not, regret's the wrong word, because I couldn't have done it anyway. I broke the subframe on the bike again. So it's just like, it would not have been sensible to take a sports bike with a broken subframe into Mongolia, where there's like one road anyway. So it was the best decision to make at that time. But I do regret, I feel like a loss for not going there. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day.
Because you may have struggled, with the subframe broken or not on that sports bike. Well, you would.
Oh, yeah. But that was all part of it.
You would have. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, there's parts of other countries where I struggled. So that's part of. If you were bothered about that, you wouldn't take that kind of bike, would you? It's like, it's all part of it. It's like,
why did you take that bike, Bruce? I mean, seriously, why did? Well, I know you loved that bike, but
it's the bike I owned. And I am a very, very stubborn person, in that if I set my mind on something and I truly believe I can do it, then I'm going to make that happen. So in my mind, I never, ever, ever thought that I would sit on that bike and just ride it and everything would be hunky-dory and I'd have a great time. And on the road, I'd be Valentino Rossi. And in the off-road bits, I'd be like some sort of Dakar specialist hurting my way along. I had no beliefs that that's what life would be like. I was expecting to be pushing the bike, dropping the bike, coming off the bike. But that's kind of part of it for me. I wanted the challenge to do it. So, and then the more people that told me, you'll never do it on that bike, it became a massive sort of, I'm going to do it. So that helped give me the drive, So when times did get hard, you were like, don't give up, because you're not letting them win. Let's keep going. Yeah. And it's weird, because I am inherently very lazy. I can be the laziest person out there. But there's just some things light a fire, and when the fire's lit, it's happening. So.
I can completely understand that, and you would certainly get around. You would get around China on a sports bike now, for sure. The roads, if you could survive the driving. The driving's a bit hairy. At least it was.
Have you been to the UK recently? Our roads are atrocious.
Yeah, I drove up from the tunnel up to the Lake District last July, and I found it mentally exhausting. Just straight up the motorway. I'm just not used to that density of traffic. It just I found it really tiring mentally. Just
you don't notice that until you drive or ride somewhere else, whether that's in Europe or another country outside of Europe. When you come back to the UK, it really strikes you how overpopulated and how much traffic there is. Mind you, I'm saying overpopulated to someone that lived in some of the main cities in China.
Yeah.
But like the roads in the UK, they're just rammed full half the time.
Yeah.
Certainly where I live in the southeast.
Yeah.
You don't get that in other places.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the Chinese, when we were living there in Beijing, they had done quite a lot to restrict car ownership, and the traffic was still pretty hairy, but there was a lot of bikes, and there probably still are today. But I have to say, because after we lived in Taiwan, we then went to the Philippines. We lived in Manila for 3.5 years. And
wow.
The traffic in Manila was something else. I just horrendous. I remember going to pick up my parents once just before Christmas at the airport, and what should have taken like 40 minutes to get home took like 3 hours. And just that was not unusual. It's just, it was horrendous. But I mean, that was a completely different culture. And I basically took that contract on the basis of my, I've been convinced that it was the best place to have mangoes in the world because I really like mangoes. And like seriously, I mean, mangoes are just brilliant, and Filipino mangoes are great. And whether you have them with a smoothie or with gin or vodka, or what, you just do so many things with mangoes. And I thought,
you really do like mangoes, don't you?
I love mangoes, and like, okay. And my wife had a great time living in the Philippines. I mean, she still has friends from the Philippines, mostly from the expat community, I have to say. Still has friends who, like, in next month, she's going to a birthday party from one of her friends who now, well, I think she has to go to work. And no, it's actually next week, I should say. It's not next month. She has to go to Barcelona for a work meeting, and at the weekend that follows, or the basically the Manila crowd of her friends are all meeting in Barcelona. I hate. This sounds like we had this massive glamorous lifestyle, and by a lot of measures it was, but I was just a humble technician. Like I really, I was not. I want to be clear. I was not like the country manager or anything like this. I was a very, well, yeah, I think a very low level, starting to move up towards middle management again, sort of position. These were not super senior positions, but because there was so much money in mobile telephony at that time, and I had a certain expertise in a certain area, I was offered positions. I mean, at that stage, they said you can live everywhere outside of China except for Singapore. So we said, okay, we'll go live in the Philippines. That sounds good. They've got good mangoes. I'm sold. So we'll go do that. And yeah, I mean, we had a good life there. I mean, it's a crazy place in some ways. A lot of guns everywhere, but
really,
we had. Oh yeah. You go to a 7-Eleven or a McDonald's, there's an armed guard outside. But is
that because of crime levels, or is it just a cultural thing? It's what they do.
I think it's a little bit more of a cultural thing. Some stuff happens, but it's superficially, it sounds like, oh, there's some bad crime, and yeah, there are killings and things that happen in the Philippines, but what may superficially appear to be just someone going after a jewelry shop, turns out it's actually much more of a personal family thing. Maybe one brother's been, being offended, and the other brother's the one who's running the jewelry business, and so brother A hires some gunmen to go hit the store. Don't kill anyone. Wow. Don't make sure no one's killed, but just give them a good scare and take some of the jewelry. It's when you look into things, it's like, this is a lot more complicated than what it appears to be. Yeah. But that's, I mean, the poverty in the Philippines is pretty disturbing. I mean, of course, you've been to many places where you've encountered pretty horrendous poverty, but I think, you've been through South America. I think you would feel that a lot of South America is quite similar to the Philippines, and that is the influence of the US. It is the influence of the Spanish. Absolutely. I mean, I watch videos of these guys riding through South America, and it could be someone riding through the Philippines. The architecture, the same, a lot of things just got the same feel to me as the Philippines. But yeah, so we lived there for 3.5 years and still no motorcycling, but I did a lot of diving. That's where I really got into diving. And the boys started diving there as well. And so because on my podcast, I quite often make parallels between motorcycling and diving. And so that's where sort of my diving experience started. And then
to clarify, we're talking about scuba, not jumping off a cliff into
yeah, we are talking about scuba. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But after 3.5 years, they would not extend my contract any further. And by that stage, the glamour had come off the mobile telephony industry, the cellular business. And so we ended up in Singapore. And I'd say my wife, who'd had a great time in the Philippines, she probably didn't talk to me for about 6 months. The first 6 months we were in Singapore because she was so pissed off that she left all her friends. But I mean, of course, I'm exaggerating. Right. But yeah, Singapore was a bit of a shock to the system. But in the end, we stayed there for 11 years or something.
Wow.
Just, I mean, we went on, I got, it was basically the only job I could get. So suddenly life was a lot more expensive in Singapore. We're living in this tiny apartment. Schooling was very expensive. So just, we went from being quite comfortable to being not so comfortable in Singapore. But then my wife got a job, and then life got much better, and we hadn't planned to stay so long in Singapore, but we realized by that stage the boys were sort of getting to their tweens or sort of approaching their teens, and we realized actually for the boys they needed stability. We didn't need, when they're really young, you can chop and change. It doesn't really affect them that much. But once they
I was going to ask how had all this affected the kids?
Well, okay, that's probably a whole podcast in itself. But basically, they say for kids who come from a culture like New Zealand but who've never lived in their culture, they describe them as third culture kids. And there's a lot of third culture kids around, right? And our boys are definitely third culture kids. I mean, my eldest, he still sounds like an American when he talks because he started schooling. Well, he started in Taiwan, but he basically did 3.5 years in the Philippines, and he picked up an American accent there, and he didn't lose it. He just never lost that American accent, which still grates. But he, in Singapore, it was a good period of stability. And the thing is, families with third culture kids typically have to be quite close because you don't have the extended family. You don't have uncles and aunts around. You don't have cousins around. You don't have grandparents. Yeah. They may see their grandparents once a year, And so the nuclear family becomes very tight knit, and we still are sort of very tight knit. Even though one son's in New Zealand, one's in Austria these days, but we're very comfortable when we're back together. We're very quite close little family. But I think that's because of that period of living just by ourselves as a family unit for so long. But definitely they benefited from having an extended period, basically all through most of their high school in Singapore. And they still have friends from Singapore. And, regardless of what you think about Singapore, in some ways it's quite a good place to bring up kids because you don't have maybe some of the dramas that parents have with kids, with teenagers in other parts of the world. Because, Singapore, you've got to keep your nose clean. And it's just we as parents have to ram it into the kids, but the schools constantly ram it into the kids. Do not do drugs. There are so many stories of kids who got involved, even with just like weed, not hard drugs, and within 24 hours, the whole family's out of the country. so that they're not prosecuted. So it can just ruin careers and things like that. So they're really strict on drugs in Singapore, like completely no tolerance. So yeah, the upside is, as a parent, the taxis are reliable. There isn't much low-level corruption. It's a very clean society. The civil service is very effective in Singapore. Putting aside how you feel about all those restrictions and things in Singapore, it's actually quite a nice place to bring up teenagers because a lot of worries that people maybe have in other parts of the world, you just do not have there. So that was quite good, I have to say. Yeah.
I've known a few people who've lived there, and obviously quite a lot of people who've travelled and been there. And I have found the ones that travel, I've just kind of sort of come away going, it was just a bit clinical and like, it's lovely and clean, but they were like, there's like no meat to it. Whereas people that have lived there, certainly the ones that have spent a bit of time there, they have almost like maybe not a love, but a fondness for their time there.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, we were working pretty hard there, I have to say. Maybe to unhealthy levels. I mean, that certainly is the way things are in Asia. People work crazy hours, and I sort of experienced that in mainland China, in Taiwan, the Philippines. People just work 24/7 often, especially when, you had a project on or something, and that's not healthy. I guess the good thing about Singapore is that everywhere slightly more interesting is really close. So if you want to get a little bit crazy, Indonesia's not very far away, Malaysia's not very far away, Thailand, up to Cambodia, Laos, places like that. It's with an hour's flight away. And so it's a great place, particularly if you do go away and it's a bit crazy somewhere. It's like coming back to Singapore is quite relaxing. It's like, okay, I'm back.
It's like a detox.
Yeah. I know how everything's going to work here. I'm not going to have to negotiate anything. It's just, things, the public transport will work. I know how it works. Just things that once you know how to live in Singapore, it's very predictable and safe and easy.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So from Singapore, where'd you end up from there?
So we did something like 11 years. So at this stage, my career sort of... I became one of those typical sort of middle managers who rebelled a little bit from playing the corporate game. And just there's only a certain level of bullshit I can tolerate. And so my career kind of plateaued a little bit, which I was fine with because I did not want to play the corporate game to get higher.
Yeah.
But at that time, my wife's job just went skyrocketed, just like stratospheric. Like she just kept getting promoted, and eventually, late 2019, she got a job offer to come and work in head office here in Germany. And I said to her, "Do you want to do this?" And she said, "I really want to do this." I said, "Great." And she'd basically followed me everywhere. She'd followed me from China to Taiwan to the Philippines to Singapore. So I said, "You know what? I don't mind walking away from this job that I'm doing because I do not love it. I enjoy the people I work with, but the job itself does not excite me." And so we decided we'd take her, the promotion that she was getting, to come to Germany. And she came sort of on a first visit in March 2000. And this is where, of course, it gets interesting because, remember what happened in March 2000? Hello, COVID. She got stuck in Germany.
2000? 2020?
Sorry, 2020. Sorry.
2020,
okay.
yeah. I thought, I missed that one.
Yeah, so if you were doing just an audio podcast, Bruce, I'd expect you to perfectly edit that and so that I don't look like a dickhead for getting those
We don't edit on this podcast.
Yeah. So just people would just go, "Oh, you idiot." Okay. So 2020. So she came across here to Germany in March 2020, and she was supposed to be here like for a month of work, staying in a service department, and then she was going to come back. And so she was supposed to sort of flip backwards and forwards between Germany and Singapore for 6 months until we finally moved at the end of the school year, because we still had the youngest son was still in school. And
Right.
but she got stuck here because they closed all the borders. So she got stuck, and then everywhere. We had a very severe lockdown in Singapore. Like, it was, work from home. Yeah, we all remember that. I don't need to repeat what all those things are like, but I can tell you it's pretty strict in Singapore. And my son, he must have finished school about the end of July. So he came across in July to Germany. And then I stayed for about 6 more weeks finishing work. And then I flew across. And it was just amazing. Like, I went to Changi Airport in Singapore, hardly anyone in the airport. The plane, Singapore Airlines plane to direct flight to Frankfurt, I think there were like 8 people on the plane. It was just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I loved COVID when we're traveling. It was awesome. There's just no bugging around. It was amazing.
Yeah. So that was it. I came to Germany and joined the rest of the family here, and we've been here ever since. And when I got here, the German authorities said to me, you need to learn German. I said, okay, well, yeah, I'll try and learn some German. So I did a German course for about 4 months and got like the minimum German level, and probably haven't progressed much beyond that point. I've gone backwards. We don't need to test me now. Thank you. And I was going to go out and work, try and find work, but I can tell you, as a 50, whatever it was, with no network in the country, it's pretty hard to find work. And then we also have this dog who I refer to as a special needs dog, and I'm not being flippant because he is a special needs dog. He's a lovely dog, but he cannot be left alone for 5 seconds. He just screams like a little child if you leave him alone. And I think it was because it was all to do with the big move from Singapore to Europe, because we put him on a plane because he travelled separately from us. We put him on a plane, and he didn't see any of us again until he saw Tina like 27 hours later. And he's never gotten over that separation anxiety.
Yeah.
He's a lovely dog otherwise. Like, he's a character and he's fun, but he's just got one problem: he cannot leave him alone. And so I sort of have been a little bit stuck at home. But then this is where the podcasting sort of comes in. I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? Struggling to get work. So first of all, I'll start volunteering podcast production. So I started reaching out to some podcasts saying, I like what you do. Do you want a producer? And I got a few people said, no thanks. But then a couple of British guys one Geordie and one guy from sort of near London who live in Bavaria, they were putting out a podcast, started during COVID, like a lot of podcasts did. And I really enjoyed it. Really good sense of humour. And I thought they were both natural broadcasters. And so I just reached out to them and said, hey, love the show. Do you need a producer? And they came back more or less immediately and said, yes, please. And they were like really desperate for someone to get on board. And I got on board about 70 episodes? And we did a weekly episode up until late last year, and then we decided we'd had enough. We stopped. So what that allowed me to do is sort of refresh all my old sound engineering skills that I, from back in my radio days. And I eventually got the confidence up to reach out to an independent journalist in New Zealand and said, look, I think I can make your podcast sound better, because it was another one of these Zoom recorded podcasts where everyone was talking all over the top of each other, and it sounded like shite. It really did. And so I said, look, this is what I can do, and I think it will sound a lot better, because I think it's a good podcast, but you're all talking over each other and it sounds terrible, blah, blah, blah. And he said, you know what? That sounds really good. Can we have a meeting? Because I said, look, I'm going to be in New Zealand next week. I thought about this idea for 6 months, and then a week before going to New Zealand, I reached out to him. And he said, yeah, look, I'm going to be in Wellington. When you're going to be in Wellington, let's have a meeting. And so I had a meeting, and sort of I guess the pitch I made was, look, I'm a New Zealander. I know New Zealand culture. I know New Zealand politics, because it's sort of a current affairs, politics, sort of kind of a show. I know all those things. But also, when we finish recording the show on a Thursday night in New Zealand time, you guys go to bed, but that's just the start of my day, and I can work through your night producing it, tidying
ready
it up
for the next.
And so when you get up the next morning, you can publish it straight away. And this was an idea that I'd had. I'd heard this concept years and years ago about some people who were doing translations of books and things. Mm-hmm. So they were based in New Zealand, but their clients were in Europe. And that was the same thing. The client would send across something at the end of the day, and the New Zealanders would work on it while the client was asleep overnight because of the 12-hour time difference. And so all of that sort of appealed to my boss, who's now my boss. And since, I don't know, it's been over 2 years now I've been doing that job. It's just 1 day a week. It's chump change, but it keeps me busy. And okay, we didn't win an award this year, but last year we picked up a silver award in the New Zealand Podcast Awards. So I do, on my profile, I do claim that I'm a award-winning podcast producer. Yes. Yes.
Well, you are. You are.
You can't take it away from me. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So what brought about, obviously Real Riders involves motorcycles. How did the motorcycle thing come about?
So
in fact, I tell you what, Simon, I should have done this right at the very start. I have a new question which I'm going to pose all guests, and I should have done this right at the start. But we've covered through like what got you into podcasts and where you are sort of now. So this question. I describe Bru Time as a relaxed conversation podcast exploring what it really means to live your life through honest conversations with people who choose more. When you hear that, what does choosing more mean to you?
Okay, so I will try to answer that by saying I was producing other people's podcasts, and I came up with the concept of Real Riders, and that, you know, I was never going to be a Bru Time. I was never going to be a TAM podcast. That's not where my skill set. You know, the hardest thing the hardest thing I find about podcasting as a host is being a host. You know, that's something I'm constantly trying to work on. So,
really?
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. So I thought, okay, I would like to make my own podcasts end to end. And for 6 months, I thought, who can I find to be my host? Who can I find to be my host? And in the end, after 6 months thinking, no one's going to want to do this for free. No one's going to be as interested in the small, you know, the Venn diagram crossover of filmmaking and motorcycling. It's a very small niche, right? So no one's going to want to do all these things. If I want to do this, I'm going to have to do it myself. So when I started doing it, I thought, you know what? I'm going to try and make it as good as possible. I'm going to be almost like one of those annoying motivational speakers who middle managers get exposed to in the corporate environment all the time. You know, it's like, they come in and they're super hyped and they're trying to get you through this training course that the upper managers think you need to improve performance and productivity, all those kind of things, which you know, as a middle manager, you tend to be a little bit cynical about. And I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to drink the Kool-Aid and try and do it as professionally as possible, make it so that people go, okay, he's a bit of a shit host, but he's respectful. He's thinking about his questions. He's okay. I didn't watch all your videos. I have owned that one, but you know, try and do the research and cover for my inadequacies, shall we say, what I perceive to be my inadequacies, by taking that approach of trying to be as professional about it and really be ambitious to try and make something good. So when you say more, that's kind of what resonates with me. It's like really try and do a really good job with making this podcast and not be too casual about it. I've relaxed a little bit since the early days, I think. But in the beginning, I was thinking I would just not have my voice in it at all. I just get the guest to speak, do that kind of a podcast. But I think that's what more means a little bit to me, to actually try and do something. And I don't, download numbers, all that kind of stuff is not the thing that I count my success on. It's other things. It's the connections I've made, the fact that I still have a number of my former guests are now good friends. We're in constant contact. We're talking about these things. I'm in collaborations with Clive and Noel with the Adventure Motorcycle Film Festival. And I'm getting access to people like yourself to come on, Real Riders. Getting access to guests, that's a big thing. So that when you contact people, they go, oh, yeah, I've heard of that, or, oh, I'd love to do that. Of course, you get a lot of no answers as well, as I'm sure you're well, maybe you're not, but...
No, all the time.
Yeah.
It's the hardest part of the podcast is getting guests on.
Yeah. And
just trying to keep it exciting, isn't it? New and and exciting for you as well. As a host of a podcast, you have to have an interest in that person and what they're doing, don't you? And it's right.
Well, this is a couple of things that I worked out. I worked out after about the first 5 episodes, I thought, there's kind of a danger here that I'm just going to keep doing the same podcast. I'm going to keep asking the same questions. And okay, maybe some people out there think, well, yeah, that's kind of your problem already, Simon. But I realized that I had to try and change that. And the thing that I was quite uncomfortable with and took a little while to accept was I actually had to put a little bit more of me into the podcast. And you hear this so many times, and I'm still uncomfortable with this, but you hear this from so many people say they like a podcast, they come for the topic, but they stay because of the host, typically, or the people who are on the podcast. And so I realized that, okay, I'm going to have to show a little bit more of myself in the podcast. And this is part of also me trying to develop as a host by being comfortable, being a little bit more of me on the podcast,
But do you not find I know how I react to people like that, people like you, like when someone is open and honest about what they see as failing's the wrong word. When someone's open and honest about what they see as their fallings maybe, or what they're not particularly good at, what they want to do, all this sort of stuff. But I, as a viewer or a listener, I feel like ingratiated with that person. Maybe it's the honesty, maybe it's the openness, but you sort of bond, and I don't see any of those shortcomings. To me, it's just like, I like this bloke. He's honest. He's open. I'm not going to get any bullshit here, and that draws me into the conversation. So I'd imagine your audience will be that type of person.
Yeah. I mean, touch wood. No one's come at me and said, oh, your podcast's crap. You're trying to be this or you're trying to be that and you're failing. So, it's kind of, when I receive it hasn't happened yet, but when I do, because I've got such a small audience probably, but the first bit of really negative feedback will be like, I'm almost like going to say to that person, congratulations, you're the first person who's hated it and has told me that they hate it. And it's like, it had to happen one day, and congratulations, you're the first person. It may happen after this. It's quite possible. But that's where I sort of protect myself by going, you know what, just be professional, show respect. And what you say about openness and honesty, I think it just, it just works. And so many of my
It's
guests,
integrity, mate. It's integrity.
Absolutely. And so many of my guests, the last interview I did, Jeff, the guy after you, he said people sniff that stuff out immediately, particularly on YouTube. If you come across as insincere, if you're not open and honest, you'll lose an audience immediately. So, yeah, and that's the great thing about podcasting is making things that we've come up with. We're not following a formula. We're just like, okay, I'm here to be myself, and that's what I like about podcasting.
Exactly, and when you are like that, when you create a podcast like that or content like that, where you are just you're just being you, then you attract your crowd, you attract your audience. So the people that don't like it, they're going to listen to about the first 5-10 minutes and go, that's probably not even that. They'll just be, not for me, and off they go. The ones that actually invest and listen to, I don't know, half an episode or a full episode, they're making that decision. I like this bloke. I like this. I'm in. And then, boom, there you go. But what I found is, and I see this myself with the podcasts that I listen to, and even like the YouTube videos I watch, you kind of, something comes on your horizon, doesn't it? A podcast comes on and you're, I love this, I'm listening to this. And you sit and you binge listen to loads or watch loads of episodes. And then if they're coming out every week, well, 2 times a week, whatever it is, every month, you wait and, here it is, a new episode. You listen to it. After a period of time, I think because we are just being ourselves, I notice it myself when I listen back to when I sit and edit my own podcast, I find myself saying the same thing a lot of the time. It's like this, I say awesome a lot, or I say 100% a lot. And it's just like, oh God. And those little things, when I hear it in other people's podcasts, like I listen to Joe Rogan a lot, he says the same stuff time and time. He starts talking about jiu-jitsu, comedy, weed, drugs, and he seems to get that in COVID. He gets that into every single podcast. After a while, it really grates at you. So it's like, well, I'll just put that in the back burner for a while. So you take a break, don't you? Yeah. But then I end up going back to them eventually. And I see that I don't know about you, I see it in the analytics. You have a period where things just, they're going amazing. You're like, oh my God, this is growing really well. And then all of a sudden, boof, like things drop away for a bit. What's happening?
So I have to be honest and say my numbers are small, but they're quite steady. So it's almost like I have found, my crowd, or my crowd has found me. And also because at the moment, I'm not putting out so many episodes. I'm struggling to get so many out at the moment, mainly because I'm doing so much for the film festival. And also it's been Christmas, etc. I'm from a lot of last year, I tried to put out an episode every 2 weeks, but towards the end of the year, that was just impossible. And it's going to be a little bit quiet for a while. But I've got at least one lined up. I've got another prospect. So, they're going to come, and I think particularly once the film festival's gone by the end of February, I'm hoping to ramp up again and sort of have them more regularly. So I guess there are, I know from talking to some of my friends who listen, they will listen 2 months after it's been published. So maybe that's also a good thing about my podcast, is that they don't need to listen to it the week it comes out, because it's not really time locked. It's not current affairs. It's not talking about television or films or entertainment. It's something that can be listened to 2 months later from when it's published, without you're not losing anything as a listener. But tell me, because I'm kind of interested, one of the things that I think works well, one of the things I find when I'm listening to podcasts, and I listen to a lot of different podcasts, is that particularly when a guest goes into story mode and starts talking about a story, I find my listening gets suddenly really tuned into what they're saying. So as opposed to if they're just saying, oh, this is my opinion about this, okay, but when they start saying, oh, and this happened, when they go into that storytelling mode, regardless of the topic, my brain seems to switch in and listen to that more closely. Is that something that you've found as well? And if it is, are you consciously thinking, how do I get my guests to tell stories? Because that's what people like listening to.
No, I don't intentionally try and direct the conversation to get stories from people. But I think that I've never really thought about it. But I suppose if you go right back to caveman times, how did we spend our downtime, you know, like in the evenings when you're not being chased by saber-toothed tigers and stuff? I suppose we would sit around a campfire, wouldn't we? And people would tell stories. And that's gone on through millennia, through human history.
Yeah.
To this day, isn't it? You know, like we seem to be attracted to the storyteller. And when you meet someone that can tell a good story, I find that like Glaswegians, like I've got mates from Glasgow who could literally sit and read the phone book to me and they will have me in stitches just because some people have an innate ability just to entertain you, don't they? Whatever they talk about, you're compelled to listen, and it engages you. It absorbs you.
Yeah.
So if you find someone like that as a guest, it's like a gold mine.
Yeah, because you don't have to do much work as a host.
No.
You just sit back and let it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I had this Scottish comedian on here, Billy. Oh God, I've forgotten his surname. And it was just like having Billy Connolly on the podcast. I literally introduced him, and for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, he just talked. And he wasn't telling jokes, he was just talking. Yeah. And I just sat there like drinking beer. It was like watching a stand-up routine. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So
and then Mossy, you know, have you ever heard of Mossy? No. Chris Moss, the journalist? Oh, he's the guy that did the 7.5 hour chat with me. It was just, he's another one. You just let him talk, off he goes.
I may have actually heard that episode over several weeks.
Yeah. But he's another one. He's a fantastic storyteller. You know, he just, you ask him a question and off you go. 2 hours later, you'll have forgotten what the question was.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for, to try and figure out how to do that. I mean, of course, to get the right people helps, but I also try and tell me everyone's got a story to tell. It's just you've got to try and get it out of them and get them comfortable talking about it. But I mean, that's part of the development that I talked about, you know, trying to be a better host, try and answer questions that are going to trigger those questions, trigger storytelling, rather than just opinions or yes/no answers. You know, hopefully not that. But I mean, I could have been a terrible guest, and I could have just said yes and no and made
yes/no answers. Yeah. Now, I maybe that's a lesson for me to learn then, because I genuinely don't put that much thought into the podcast. There's people that I want to talk to, and I ask them to come on, and we just have a conversation. I just take it, I'm down the pub, you know, we're down the pub, we're having a chat, and you know, tell me about yourself, tell me about your life, and if they're famous for any particular reason, you know, I've had people that have rowed across the Atlantic, people that have ridden around the world with amazing stories to tell. If they've got that to talk about, brilliant. But I'm kind of like, what else is there? Like, what? No, nobody just goes for nothing to go and do some of these amazing achievements.
Exactly.
What brought you there? That's what I'm interested in. But I don't really think too much about how am I going to extract that from somebody? We just have a conversation, see where it goes.
Maybe you're just a natural, Bruce, okay? So that's,
Thanks very much. No, but I think maybe sometimes it does take me a long time to actually get to, like, not the point, but like maybe, I'm trying to think of an example. Sean Conway, right? So I had Sean Conway on here. I don't know if you know who Sean Conway is. He's this fantastic, like, ultra athlete. He did the world's biggest triathlon. So he ran, swam, and cycled around the UK. He was the first one to do that. Okay. He's cycled the world. You think of any ultra human endurance event, he's done it. He's just an amazing guy. Looks like Forrest Gump when he went off and did the running. You know, great big massive bushy ginger beard. Just an incredible, interesting bloke. But, there's probably, I think at that time, he'd not long done the triathlon thing, or certainly it'd been, the world's biggest triathlon. Certainly it had been on social media quite a lot, and maybe in the TV quite a lot. So that's a hot topic. But I think it took me quite a while to get to that, because it was like, how'd you get there? What drove you to do that? So it took a while to get to like the meat and two veng, if you like, of the conversation.
But that's also the nice thing about long form podcasts. There's no urgency. You don't have to go like in a 15-minute news item or something where I've got to hit that first question and, straight into it. You can build up to that. And that's very much your style. And that's why sometimes your episodes are 2 or 3, 7 hours long, whatever. But because it sort of grows organically, as you say. Yeah.
Mm. Well, mate, we're an hour and 20 odd minutes into this already. And, we haven't even started any questions yet. So,
yeah, again, I would say you can just edit it back. I know you're not going to, but you can cut out all that.
No. It is what it is. History. It is what it is. Yeah. So, okay, we just sort of started talking about motorbikes. What brought motorbikes into the equation, and then obviously into real riders?
Yeah, so
how that come about?
So, got my license in New Zealand when I was about should we say about 19, and motorcycle was the only option. I could not afford to buy a car, and I had my driver's license. We got them quite young. I got mine at 16, but I could have had it at 15 actually in New Zealand. So we drove quite young in New Zealand. And I thought, well, I remember I had gone on the back of some sport bikes. My sister's boyfriend at that time had a sport bike, and I remember being taken around Auckland on the back of it, and I just had no idea. I mean, this is the thing. If you've never been on a motorcycle, you might see a motorcycle leaning over as it goes around a corner, but until you've really experienced that, you go, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't do anything about it immediately. But then eventually, for financial reasons, I thought, I need to be mobile. It's driving me crazy not being mobile. And I was living in Wellington at the time. So in those early days, you could just buy a motorcycle that was 250cc or less, and you would immediately have your restricted license, and you would, or learn a license, I can't remember the naming, but you'd go and teach yourself to ride on the road. It just sounds crazy now, but I remember I got this bike, and for the first kilometre, I don't know how I didn't crash, didn't kill myself, because, I had no coordination. You can just imagine what a disaster it was. But I got through that first kilometre, and then the next 5 kilometres, and so I basically managed to get the first level of my license. It wasn't a full license. It was, restricted. And then I did a safety course, and I learned a couple of things. I learned some slow speed control. So I quite enjoyed learning to do that. It's quite amazing when you first get your bike and suddenly you realize you just sort of sit on the back brake a little bit and you can do these really tight, figure of eights and things like that. And I learned one thing that saved my bacon a number of times, and we've all sort of learned it, which is look where you want to go. So if you go into that corner too fast, do not look in the ditch. Look around the corner, regardless of how fast you're going. Look around that corner. And the number of times I've gone, oh, and literally forced my head over to look around the corner and found halfway through the corner going, well, this is pretty easy. This is comfortable. What was your problem? So that, that one thing you could almost say, learning how to use the back brake when you're driving slowly, that skill, you don't touch the front brake, you use the back brake when you're going to slow speed control. Clutch control, and just looking where you want to go to get yourself out of trouble. So I learned that. I mean, I'm a fairly cautious person by nature. Touch wood, I haven't dropped my road bike. I've dropped dirt bikes in the past. I've fallen off, and that's probably a good thing to happen because that wasn't too much drama. So I think I realized within the first week of riding a motorcycle, I'm never going to be a fast motorcycle rider. So there's a choice here. You either go stupidly fast, hurt yourself, kill yourself, or just sort of be on edge constantly, or take it back 5% and just be a long living rider and enjoy it, and just accept that, because it's that thing when you're at school, when you realize you're not the fastest runner, you're not the fastest swimmer, you're not the best football player. Through life, you've got to kind of accept where you fit into that sort of hierarchy. And there are some people out there who are super fast, super strong, super good on a motorcycle, and realize that if you try and keep up with those people, you're just going to kill yourself. And so I was very comfortable at figuring out where I was in that sort of hierarchy of slow to fast riders. And to this day, I'm even slower probably than I was then. And that is perfectly fine for me. I still enjoy motorcycling. Roads in Germany are often very empty. If I have good visibility around the corner, I love going around corners. But if I know that there are more hazards, I'll dial it back and look to ride another day. So I know
it's just life experience, isn't it? It's just life experience.
Yeah, and recognizing your own limitations, I think, and accepting those. I think that's what sport taught me. I don't know I was a reasonably sporty kid, and had some success and some failures, and I think that was a really important lesson for life. You're not going to win all the time, but when you work hard and you do achieve, you really appreciate those achievements, rather than just things being handed to you.
I think failure's probably the most important lesson you can learn in life. For me, without doubt, because it's failure's how you grow, isn't it? Failure's how you realize what your true limitations are, or abilities are, and then that also identifies what you need to do to fix it, doesn't it? It's like, okay, where are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? My strengths are the things that you're succeeding in. Your weaknesses are the things that you're failing in. So for me, like when I've come off I've crashed quite a few times, and I used to think I had riding a motorbike in the bag, because in all honesty, looking back now, I got away with it. I was riding my Gixxer Thou flat out sometimes, pinned to the throttle, 186 mile an hour, thinking, TT next for me, I can do this. But the truth is, I got away with that because all of a sudden, after like 10 years of riding, I remember just riding into work or maybe riding home from work, and I'm doing 35 odd mile an hour. Somebody pulled out in front of me and I couldn't brake and stop in time. So all those times when I've been riding pretty damn quick and I've managed to react and I've got away with it, at 30 odd mile an hour, I couldn't react and brake and stop in the time that I thought I could. And that was a massive eye opener for me. It was like, oh, hang on a minute, So you start dialing things back a little bit, and I'm the same as you. I've got slower, but I think definitely safer over the years. Yeah.
I'd actually quite like to do some more advanced training, just because I'd like someone to say to me, hey, you've got a bad habit there, or a bad habit, or you should be doing this. I would appreciate that. I'd be very open to that now. In Germany, it's a little bit difficult because my German's, pretty basic, and I think I would struggle in a German setting. I have a contact for some guy in the Netherlands, and they tend to speak a lot more English in the Netherlands. So I may take that up, but I graduated from the 250, GSX 250 up to a GSX 550, which was a nice bike for me. That was a nice second bike. And I rode that for quite a while, but then I went to university and then I started getting poor and I had to get rid of it. And that's when mountain bikes started getting popular. And so I sold the motorcycle and got a mountain bike, basically just for transport around the city. And didn't get back into motorcycling until we were living in Singapore. So in Singapore, the public transport's amazing. And it's cheap, and taxis are cheap. There's no business case to own a car in Singapore because they're basically twice the price. They put this special tax on them, right? And so cars are extremely expensive. So we never had a car, but my youngest son was quite keen on football, and he needed to be taken to football practice, and it was a sort of a little bit of an odd remote place where he could have gone by taxi, but it was sort of like, well, why don't you get a little motorbike and you can take him on that? So I thought, oh, it's so many years since I've been motorcycling, apart from one trip in Thailand and one trip in Laos where we did a tour, which was pretty cool. It's another podcast. We can talk about that. I got a little motorcycle, and I had a full license in New Zealand, and I took it to the authorities in Singapore and said, hey, can I have my full motorcycle license in Singapore now, please? And they said, have you got proof that that your license, or have you got proof that you actually used to ride a bike bigger than 200cc? And, like insurance or something like that. And I had no way to prove that because it was so many years ago. There were only paper records. There weren't electronic records. So I ended up having to have a license, like a learner's license in Singapore, which allowed me to ride a 200cc or less than 200cc bike, which was okay. I could get my young son on the back of the bike, and we used to tootle off and go to football practice. But then I really enjoyed motor. I sort of thought, I quite like this. Let's get the next level of license in Singapore. So in Singapore, you go 200cc, and then there's this really crazy 200 to 400 license, the next license up, and then it goes over 400 basically. And I thought, I'm an experienced rider. I'll go and easily nail this. I'll go get my license and I'll get a 400cc. And 400cc is like the perfect size bike for Singapore, actually. You don't need anything bigger, and it's powerful enough to get you out of the trouble that you might get yourself in. So I went along and sort of fully expected to be passed through and told to come back for the test. And they saw me riding. They said, no, buddy, you've got to come back and continue having lessons. And I was,
oh no,
I was gutted. I was like, what's going on here? And I must have done like 6 weeks of lessons. But the thing is, in Singapore, it's like dressage, and it's like horse dressage. So every time, the stuff that I still do to this day, actually, every time you stop, you're only allowed to put your right foot down, which means that when you come to a stop, you've got to be in first gear. You've got to be in first gear because you're never allowed to put your left foot down. Or have I got the feet round? No, you're only allowed to put your left foot down, so your right foot's always on the back brake. So that means you've got to be in first gear so that you can take off again by just lifting up your left foot. And so you watch me now, every time I come to a stop, I'm in first gear because it's been beaten into me that you must be in first gear. And I think it's actually quite a good idea, It works quite well. You were not allowed to rest your fingers on either the brake, I don't fully agree with this, or the clutch. So unless you're braking or unless you're pulling the clutch in, you had to wrap your hands all the way around the hand grips. What else? The worst part, and I don't do this because it's absolutely stupid, you had to hold your feet above the levers. So, when you're riding, you normally tuck your feet down, your ankles sort of relax, and you tuck your feet under either the gear lever or the brake lever. When we were being tested, we had to have our feet, so you sort of pulling your toes up. It's very uncomfortable, but you had to hover your feet over the levers the whole time, and which is uncomfortable and pretty stupid. And I remember I eventually got quite, not surprising because I kept having to go back, but I got quite matey. I got quite matey with some of the guys there. And I said, some of this is a bit silly, isn't it? Like, come on, tell me that when you go through a busy Singapore intersection, please tell me that you've got your hands at least resting on the brake, if not on the clutch. It goes, yeah. But if you do that on this course, you'll be penalised and you'll fail the test. So there's that. What is it that this, like, they talk about the 7 steps of acceptance, like when you lose someone through death or something, you know, rage, rejection, and it's
yeah,
like,
I got you. Yeah.
Finally I came to the point where, okay, if I want to get this license, this next level, I accept what they're saying to me. I've got to play by their game, and And yeah, it took me a while, but I managed to pass this test, and I felt like it was the most satisfying thing I'd done for years, because I worked so hard at it. You know, it was hard work. And that's the thing also, as we get a little bit older in life, we're not quite used to having to do those hard things. You know, that's what we did in our 20s or teens.
Yeah.
And this was really hard. But actually I learned I don't fully agree with everything, but they really pushed me, and it was quite good. And I would have gone on to do the next level, but we left Singapore. So I got that level. I got a CB400, which was a perfect bike for Singapore. And I enjoyed sort of riding around the island. But, you know, Singapore is not a place for motorcyclists. Yes, I probably should have gone up to Malaysia. Didn't really have the time. Didn't 100% trust the bike. It was quite an old bike. And I sort of missed out a little bit. But anyway, my wife then says, hey, I really like this job in Germany. And the first thing more or less that occurs to me is like, Germany.
German roads.
I might just have to get a proper motorcycle in Germany. And so coming here, that was one of the big attractions. And I didn't do it for the first 6 months. I had to do this German course. It was COVID. But all this time, and this kind of ties into the podcast a little bit, I spent a lot of time watching videos. I started watching a lot of, that's when Itchy Boots was really popular. I guess she still is, but a lot of people were sort of watching Itchy Boots. And so I was watching a lot of motorcycling videos, looking forward to the bike that I was going to buy and starting to get out there once, restrictions eased, and started to realize some of these films, some of these videos I find interesting. Some of them are just leaving me, for dead. They're boring to me. Wonder why that is. And that really was the genesis of the podcast, is like realizing, maybe we could talk about this filmmaking. Maybe we could I could start interviewing people about how they make their films, what they think about, what process they go through, why they think they've been successful, because I didn't know much about it and I wanted to learn myself. That's often how podcasts start. It's not because we're experts. Yeah, sure, I could put a podcast together. That was my expertise. But I didn't know much about filming, but I was kind of interested in the filming. And I just started to learn things by talking to these guests. It was amazing.
See, I always assumed that filmmaking, or your interest in filmmaking, came from I thought that was part of your job originally, till I found out you were you come from the sound background. So I'd always assumed that you'd worked in editing or something like that, or production or directing or something like that, just because you have this love for filmmaking combined with bikes. So that's interesting that it's the love of it, but it's wanting to know more about it, which brought you in, and you chose that as the topic.
For sure. I have, for years, like probably a lot of us, had access to video editing software and video cameras and things, and made family videos when we've gone on holiday and really enjoyed the editing. Taught myself how to use those tools, but never beyond at a very hobby level. And of course, this is all well before YouTube. Remember, for old people like me, YouTube has not been around that long. It's quite a new thing. Okay, it's not so new now, but I remember the first YouTube presidential election or something. You say, when whoever it was, Obama was first elected, YouTube didn't exist. That may be not the right, strictly right, but it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting coming back when I started started watching YouTube again and motorcycle YouTube in 2020, towards the end of 2020, is like, oh, there's a lot of people out there doing this moto vlogging or making little films of their travels and things, putting it on YouTube. And yeah, it just caught my imagination and I wanted to know more. And I thought, I wonder if these people, surely they want to talk about it because I'm enthusiastic about it. I want to know about it. Usually, if I'm doing something that I really like, I want to talk about it. So I sort of assumed that these moto vloggers, these social media influencers, whatever you want to call them, serious filmmakers, all sorts of different people making motorcycle videos, I assumed that they would want to talk about it. And luckily, the vast majority of the ones I've reached out to have wanted to do that. Not everyone, but a lot of people have. So that's where it came from. That's why Real Riders was started. Like I said earlier, originally I didn't want my voice on it at all. I thought I would just have a standard set of questions and just get their answers and turn that into a podcast. So it's definitely changed from what I thought it would be at the beginning. But yeah, it's been a journey.
Do you have any ideas about further development? Are there things that you've not done that you'd quite like to do with the podcast?
Okay, so one of the exciting things indirectly is I've now, through people I've met in the podcast, basically either had offers to collaborate making films, or I've suggested to some people, hey, do you want to do a collaboration? So the podcast will continue, and maybe I need to think about how I can, what I might want to change. But what's been exciting for me personally, because I think I am a little bit of a frustrated filmmaker, like I would like to try and make films, is now I'm looking forward to doing some collaborations with some people and making some films. That excites me a lot. The podcast itself, you know, I have to be honest. I've talked to some big names in the motovlogging world, like yourself, but I also really enjoy discovering people who've got like tiny audiences, but who I think are making quite good stuff. And the bonus is often they're very keen to talk because they're really enthusiastic about what they're doing. So sure, I have connections and I could probably reach out to some of the really big people. But often it's the smaller, not known people with lower profiles, lower subscriber counts that quite often get me interested and excited. And often those people are not doing it to play the YouTube game. So they're not putting constantly a lot of things out, like every week. They're just making a film. Maybe when they go on holiday, you know, they're doing a bike trip and they make a film there. And so often those kind of channels, those little nuggets of gold, I guess you could say, that's kind of, it's like one friend, former guest, Nick, we sort of almost have a competition to who can find the next, you know, sort of who can uncover this next nugget of gold on YouTube or wherever. But I guess to challenge myself, I need to probably be looking at some of the bigger names, not necessarily on YouTube, but in the world of like cinema and stuff like that. I mean, I've talked to a few. Oh,
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, like I was lucky enough to interview Hayley Watson, who's the director of the film Motorcycle Mary, which came out a couple of years ago. And that she, not for that film, but she was basically, not directly, well, she found another story about a basketballer in the States, which went on to win an Oscar. So the fact that I was getting access to someone who is pretty much an Oscar-winning director was like, okay, extremely nervous going into that interview. She was lovely. She was, and we spoke for an hour, and it's like, that felt like a major achievement to hold my own with someone with that sort of profile. And the same with this other guy, Roberto Serini, I should say, who's does amazing commercial work, and he's made some really good films for BMW. And get access to him, have a bit of an ongoing communication with him because around the film festival and some other things, and that's exciting. And so, yeah, occasionally I need to push myself to not just concentrate on YouTube, but to move to other areas of filmmaking, for sure. That's where
something
some growth and challenges. Yeah.
That's something I've enjoyed doing in here on Bru Time. Is I didn't start this thinking, right, I'm going to talk to motorcycle YouTubers or motorcycle adventure travelers or anything. That's not the idea behind Bru Time. Mine is just about exactly what I said earlier. It's talking to people who've got a story to tell, people who've maybe had a dream and gone for it, or they've achieved something in their life which is a little bit out the norm. They've had a goal and they've gone for it. That's what I really enjoy talking to people about on here, and I want to try and push it more outside of the motorcycle sphere, if you like, because you know what it's like to begin with. When you're trying to get guests, it's like, right, who do I know? So it's people I've met. Generally, it's people I've met at various different events that I've gone to, and I've been like either a guest speaker at it, or I've just gone to listen to people give presentations and talks. And you build up a rapport and a friendship with people, don't you? So you go through all those people to begin with, and your YouTube mates and all that sort of stuff, and then it's just like, right, come on, who else is out there? And it's amazing you said there about chatting to you've had an Oscar-winning director on the podcast. Isn't it fantastic that through social media and the like, you can just do that? You can just cast the net out, take the chance. Fancy coming on the podcast? And sometimes they say, yeah.
Absolutely. Like, there's, I have a healthy dose of imposter syndrome, but I try and manage it and say, and this is one of the things that I've found through the podcast, and it's coming back to when you were talking about living your life, and it's like, you know what, I don't need to ask permission. I can just reach out to anyone through things like social media, through you look at someone's YouTube channel, there's usually an email address, or you find them on Instagram, and you just ping them, and sometimes they ignore you, or sometimes they politely say something and then you never hear from them again. And okay, for whatever reason, that's fine. But if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would you have the balls just to say, just do it. Just get out there, make a podcast, whatever. You don't have to get a license to do this. It's a great thing about podcasting. You don't need to ask anyone's permission. Just put your fears aside, forget about your imposter syndrome for 5 minutes, and just get out and do it. And coming back to integrity, you approach it honestly, with respect. You treat your guests well, and like I say, I really haven't had any negative experiences. It's okay. A few people have not got back to me, and it's not gone anywhere, but the vast majority of the experience has just been brilliant. So
awesome.
Yeah, I want to touch wood and make sure it doesn't, because I don't want it to change.
Yeah, you put the markers on it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, Simon, that is 1 hour, 50 minutes so far. Shall we tackle some questions?
If there are any questions, I was thinking I better talk because there probably won't be any questions, but I will, yeah. Okay, if there are questions,
the clan over on Patreon never let me down. So we have some questions lined up for you. So this is over on Patreon, patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, Dave Hemmings. Hi to both of you. Glad the podcast is back on air. To you both, what's your go-to kit for podcasts and filming?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, please.
Okay. The closest thing to me, I have a Shure SM7B. It's so long since I've looked at it, what it is. It's a dynamic microphone, which means it's not a condenser microphone. And the thing about a dynamic microphone is they're a little bit insensitive, which means you have to be quite close to them. But because they're insensitive, they don't have the room reverberation come into them so much. So I hopefully don't sound like I'm in a toilet too much. So good microphones make a lot of difference. So I have a SM7B. I have it plugged into a audio interface, but this little device that I'm pointing to up here, great audio this is, I'm sorry about that. This little thing is an amplifier because this particular microphone has quite a low level. And so there's an inline amplifier that boosts the signal by, I think, 20 dB. So that means by the time it gets to the interface, it's a very healthy signal. And these things are about 60 euros. There are quite a few different manufacturers of them. My very first guest, Thomas Hansen, who some of you may know, he is the one who put me onto it and said, oh, yeah, you want to get one of those. So I then go into something called an audio interface, which basically takes the analog signal, turns it into a digital signal. I've got a PreSonus Studio 68C, very middle of the market. And then that provides a USB signal into my computer. I usually wear bigger headphones because it usually isolates better from because you don't want obviously the headphone noise getting into the microphone. But purely for the visuals, Bruce, I have chosen to wear these little earbuds today so it doesn't look quite so stupid on the video. So that's sort of my recording kit. And then people will be horrified. I do all my editing with Audacity, which is a free piece of software. However, I spent quite a lot of money on audio processing software. So each audio track has about 11 different plugins looking at compression, looking at de-essing, equalization, removing any residual echo from the room. So that's where the money's actually gone into my setup. But you can get away with a 70 euro or 70 pound, 50 pound dynamic microphone if you put I usually put a duvet behind me to reduce the reverberation. You can actually get away with like maybe 150 pounds max or even less setup. Actually, you can get a dynamic USB mic that plugs straight into your computer. So you can you can be set up and ready to go for less than 100 pounds and get a decent sound, better than a lot of massive podcasts. I mean, if I've been listening to my wife, she's a big fan of The Rest is Entertainment, and so I've been listening to their podcast. It's one of the Goldhanger. They're like the biggest independent podcasters in the UK, and a lot of their podcasts sound quite shit. So you can actually have quite a good sounding podcast with a decent mic, less than 100 pounds, in a room that's, you throw up like I usually do, a ladder with a duvet behind you, maybe something similar in front of you to kill those reflections, and you can have a really good sounding podcast.
The reflections are something I struggle with in here. Obviously I've got this wood paneling to try and absorb some of it, but there's the whole roof here. There's all these flat walls there. I've put up some carpet below me, but then the other side of this, like a big wood cabin that you put in the garden. That's what I have. So the other side of this is like the gym area, and it's just a big open void. Yeah. So unless I have the mic right up next to my mouth, I do get that reverb, that echo.
Yeah.
So I have to bring like an echo cancellation software in to try and eliminate that.
Funny thing is, if you're going for the YouTube video market, or if you're going for audio, sound's important. If you're listening only, you'll pick up the imperfections slightly more than with the video. There's something about watching people speak, I believe, which changes the way your brain works. And as long as it's not too bad, there's absolutely nothing wrong with how you sound to me. I'm not hearing those reflections much when I'm watching you on YouTube. But if I'm listening to it only, I become more aware of those imperfections. Yeah. It's sort of a paradox. It's actually the same with speech imperfections. I don't know what I've been like. I hope I haven't ummed and ahed too much. If you're watching people talk and they and ah, you can tolerate that a lot more than if you're just listening to them.
Yeah.
So that's the only downside with audio podcasts is that the listener is more or less tolerant to those ums and ahs, those filler words. And yeah.
What I found having this break, like a 6-month break from doing the podcast, coming back, the last one that I just did there just now with Chris Eads, when it came to I do very minimal editing, and that's pure. All I'm doing is normalizing the audio. If there is any echo or reverb, take that out, that sort of stuff. That's pretty much all I do in terms of the actual edit. And then, I take the video and place that on a background and just restructure it slightly. That's pretty much it. But what I did notice was, because it'd been so long, I'd forgot about, things like when I breathe in or breathe out, move away from the mic, or if I scratch my beard, move away from the mic. Stuff I used to do automatically when I was doing it all the time. Because I've had that break, I wasn't doing it. So that last podcast, when I came to normalize the audio, I'm boosting a lot of the lows, I'm bringing some highs down. Well, things like breathing, I sounded like a blooming pervert half the time. It was just all this deep breathing going on, which then meant I had to bring in like a noise gate filter in there.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot how to use the noise gate filter, and I was quite tight for time. So it was just like, I fiddled about with it. And, that sounds fine. That'll do. When I did actually listen to it again, once I'd rendered it all and published it, because I was trying to get, sequences to use as reels and shorts on socials for promotion. There's still bits where I might have been breathing or laughing, but the noise gate it still sounds really digital because the noise gate's trying to cut in. So I was like, So there's all little things like that. I don't really know too much about it enough. I need to learn more about it.
One of the plugins I use is effectively a noise gate, but it's called a debreather or debreather, and it specifically listens out for those kind of typical breathing sounds and cuts them. And it doesn't cut them completely. You can change how much it cuts. So it's very annoying if you have a very big breath. That's very annoying. But if you take that and then reduce it by 6 or 9 dB, suddenly it just becomes a gentle breath, and then it becomes natural. Because if you cut it out completely, sometimes it's like, it sounds like a dropout because it takes everything out. So it's basically doing all the heavy lifting of getting the settings right that you talk about with your noise gate. It's just I push a button, I listen to, and it's not perfect, and sometimes I need to go in and tweak things, but it's one of the nicer little plugins that I've got, I have to say.
It's amazing how just a subtle change, isn't it? A subtle change you make to audio, especially in an audio podcast, as you said.
Yeah.
Pardon me. That subtle change can make such a difference.
Yeah.
Between it sounding completely natural but not annoying, or over what's the word? Sampled, processed.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
How are you finding with AI? Are you utilizing AI much?
Not in my editing. So the fact is there's some pretty clever tools out there. So I do a lot of micro editing because I am working in audio only to remove unnecessary or excessive, should we say, excessive filler words. Ahs. I clean people's speech up a lot so that they sound as good as possible. Like I do try to make my guests sound as good as possible. That doesn't mean eliminating all ums and ahs, because sometimes you need them for effect, and it sounds unnatural if you take them out, or you want them there because it's important to how they're speaking sometimes. But there's some really good tools that do that automatically, and I'm starting to think, there's all these tools that you push a button and it does all these things automatically for you to normalize, to balance the voices, to remove the excessive ums and ahs. And I'm like, you know what? I'm almost out of a job. It's a bit like typewriter repair men. When was the last time you came across someone who could repair a typewriter? They're dying. They're a dead breed now. So the only thing that saves my bacon at the moment, the only thing I can do better than AI is if you have 3 or 4 voices, and quite often in the podcast I do, the one I actually get paid for out of New Zealand, quite often we will have 2 hosts and 2, sometimes 3 guests all on at the same time, all recorded separately. And because people are remote, they're not in the same room, they're on telephone lines, video, people will talk over each other.
Yeah.
And the thing that I can do in that situation is I can spread things out so that I let person A finish saying what they're saying before person B interrupts them. And so I drag the other tracks literally to the right, further away, so that we can hear everything that the person A said before person B or person C or whatever starts to speak. So I can do that. AI can't do that at the moment. That's the only thing I can probably do. Of course, I do a lot of things manually that people now do by just pushing a button, because that's kind of pride. That's a little bit like, it's like, if I'm going to call myself a sound engineer, I need to know how to set up a compressor. I need to know how to set up a gate or an expander, these tools that you talked about that I refer to as well. But AI is really nipping at my heels. If they can come up with a clever way to spread out those people talking over each other, my job is basically for 90%. It's arguably done and dusted, and you can get a machine to do what I do, which is a bit sad. The only thing, of course, well, there's the other thing that I do that a machine can't do, is when one of my hosts says something like, and this happened. He said, it was President Truman who talked about the military-industrial complex. Oh, no, it was Eisenhower. Oh, no, it was Truman. And I can fix it because it was Eisenhower and said that, because I know it was Eisenhower who said that. And so I can fix the edit so that he says, and President Eisenhower talked about the military-industrial. And that's actually a real-world example. One of my hosts got confused about that fact, and it was just a fact that I happened to know. So sometimes hosts will say something. Another host of mine said iTune instead of iTunes, and S is a very... the letter S is very flexible. I can take an S almost from anywhere in their speech and put an S on the end. Yeah, S is if you're looking to edit somewhere, you can join up S's. It's so easy to join up S because there are very few variations about how an S sounds, and so you can edit in the middle of S's, and I've literally taken an S from one part of speech and corrected someone from saying iTune to iTunes by putting an S on the end. That's simple to do. So yeah, those are real world examples of things that I can do applying human intelligence, which AIs at this level at the moment will not be able to do. So
we get to a stage, because AI is obviously it's always developing, and it's something I've thought about. I've actively looked to see if there's AI that can help with my YouTube video editing, my motovlog editing, just because that, for me, the initial bit of just sitting and going through 2, 3, 4 hours of timeline footage, all these clips, to sit and go through it and cut out, the guff till I get to the meat of the video. Where's all the dialogue? Where's all the action? Where's the nice, the corner? I like the corners, just because it brings in some movement and some action into a video. So my tour vids very much tend to be, conversation, sequence of riding, conversation, sequence of riding, that sort of, and the conversation can be on or off the bike, whatever it is. But that's kind of how my vlogs go. It just takes forever. You're talking a good 3 to 5 days of constant work to bring, say, 3 or 5 hours of footage down to something workable, 20, 25, 30 minutes or whatever it is. And I thought, there's got to be AI out there that can help with that. But at the moment, there's not. There's some that say we can do it, and I've tried it, and it's shit. It's just, it hasn't got that human element, It doesn't identify the human bits, which we as humans, we recognize instinctively. Okay, well, I know what's said here or what is happening on the screen here. I know bikers will relate to, or hopefully they will relate to. So I'll keep that.
I would imagine that's that kind of task assisting you. Even it's to say, look, we know, Bruce, we've analyzed all your videos, because this is what they do. They say, the AI will analyze your videos and then go, we can see your style, we can see the pattern, we know what you like. Give us your raw footage and we will provide you with the clips that we think follow your typical kind of structure. That is kind of an AI thing. So I'm almost surprised that hasn't been done for video editing now, because if you think of, I use AI. I don't use AI in editing. What I use AI for is I feed my completed episode into ChatGPT, and then I have actually my wife wrote it because she's a bit of a whiz with writing ChatGPT prompts. She wrote the prompt that says, okay, pull out half a dozen quotations and provide the summary. And the thing is, it's not making it up. It did at the beginning. We made some tweaks, and it no longer makes shit up, which is good. It's very impressive sounding shit, but it's because it's quite
lies
close.
Like a cheap watch, doesn't it?
But it's still close to the time of the cheap watch. In other words, it's like that sounds like it could have been right, but now it only provides specific quotes, and it's so helpful to do that for me, purely for the social media material that I generate and for pushing out on Instagram, promoting the so that's what I use. But the fact that there are so many, you must have seen these clever tools that you say, okay, please write me a press release written in the style of this journalist or of this writer, or so the fact that it could pretty easily analyze your typical, because I know, like you say, you've got a sort of a formula, what you like to do. I'm surprised it's not at least being able to generate the clips for you, and then you still have the decision about, because it's all non-destructive, right? So you just pull in your clips and maybe make them a little bit longer, shorter, whatever you choose, reject, whatever. You still have the artistic sort of control over what you're making. It's just sort of helped assemble likely clips that you might want to use.
I use Opus Clip for the podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that. And that very much does do that. You give it, you either upload the final video file or the YouTube link, and then it takes 20 minutes, half hour to analyze it. And it gives you 40 to 50 short clips, which I can, you can set the duration. Do you want it 1 to 30 or 30 to a minute or over a minute? and it just gives you them, and it gives you a rating, from like A+ right through to this is a C-, and it just gives you a load of spiel about it. What's the decent hook? What's the topic? All that. And then I then go through all them and go, right, I like this one. I like that one. I can find the timestamps, go to my original file on the editing software. And then the AI will edit it, but it's not great. So I go back and I do it myself on the timeline. So I do use it for that, but it's for the motovlog stuff. I've not found anything yet that can do that yet. I've tried it with the motovlogs and it's just, it's guff so far.
I can imagine we're not far away from having a tool that does that, because this is what I hear from everyone. It's that initial going through, identifying what clips you're likely to want to use, sort of building that rough timeline. That's kind of the slightly boring part of the process and takes a lot of time before you finesse it and get, mix it to the music and do all those things that you like to do. Yeah. So
that's
can't
the
be
fun
far
bit,
away.
that bit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. I've got a new editor on board, and he's currently working on the first project, for us to be working together. And he's a full-on professional editor, been working in this for like a decade or so now. But he's never done this type of vid, like the motovlog style of vid, a tour vid. And he's just like, holy shit, there's so much content. He's like, where'd you start? How do you sync in all this? Because I know how I sync up all my different cameras. I just use my visor when I'm riding, So I'll either say sync them up 1, 2, 3, slam the visor down, and I can do that amongst the cameras. Or it's just visual, I'll just be like that between the if there's a conversation going on the comms, I can just do this and then slam the visor down, and I know I'm syncing it up. He doesn't know any of this, so he's just like, how are you syncing all this stuff up? And where's the in point? Where's the out point? And I'm like, there's not. You just got to go through it and we sieve out all the shit. It's just how it is.
How many of you? Do you think your audience understands when you're doing that? Your 1, 2, 3 sync them up. Do they understand them? Actually, you're not just doing that for show. That it's actually really important and useful for post production.
Some I think do. I get asked about it all the time. People are always asking, what does that mean? And I just explain it to them. But I think these days, there's so many people out there doing the motovlogging. There's so many people out there filming their rides. And more and more people trying their hand at editing. So I think there's much more of an awareness around it than maybe there used to be. Yeah, I think most people are just like, this is just way too much fuss and hard work. I can't be arsed with this. Or if they actually get through the filming part of it, they come to the edit and just go, nah, that's not for me. I can't be bothered with that. I know the feeling. But it is what it is, isn't it? Dave, sorry, for me, my sort of go-to for out on the bike when I'm motovlogging. So if it's not like the traditional action cams on the camera, it's my phone. I've got a nice DSLR, which I don't think I've even taken out the bag for the last 4 or 5 years. I've got the Pocket 3, DJI Pocket 3, which is a great bit of kit. I should use it a lot more than I actually do, but I just find 9 times out of 10 I pull my phone out and I just film on my phone. And phones are so good these days. They're brilliant. And even the audio can be really good on a phone. It's enough for YouTube. It's enough. It'll do. Unless it's really windy. When it's windy, that can be a major pain in the arse. So maybe a bit more thought into that. And then for the podcast, as I was saying, I've got the Shure M77 mic, I think it is. And then I've just got I just use a webcam. I've got a Logitech 4K webcam, which this only runs at 1080 on this. So that's pretty much it. I'm using StreamYard to record the podcast, and then I edit everything in Final Cut because I'm an Apple man. That is it, Dave. That is it. And a lot of sweating. No, not sweating, swearing. That's pretty much what happens in the edit. All right, next one. Andy. Hi, both. Looking forward to this. 2 questions for Simon, if I may. Firstly, if you could have learned one of your skills earlier, what would it be and why?
Actually, I would have liked to have learnt color grading on video editing earlier. Oh yeah. Because I learnt audio pretty early, so I think that's good. I have dabbled with video, and it's really been the last couple of years that I've started to take seriously post-production on the video side, or just visual side as well. And just realizing what a massive difference that can make. So when I first started video editing I first started about 1999. I remember the first program I got, and I was editing mini DV tapes with some pretty solid software. It worked pretty well, but just thinking, oh no, you don't need to do color correction. That's only if you're professional. So just not setting the bar too low.
Yeah.
And not pushing myself in that area, and realizing now that you can take something that looks kind of okay and make it look, wow, like quite professional with just a little bit of attention to color grading. So it's not a sound question, or it's not a sound answer, an audio answer. It's actually a visual area. That's something I would have liked to have put some attention to 25 years ago, I would say. Yeah.
I'm aware of color correction and color grading. I've watched some videos on it, but I've not invested enough time into learning it, because when I've tried it, I always just end up switching it all off and reverting back to the original. I might boost saturation a little bit. That's about it.
It is a massive topic, and it's an art as well, right? Yeah. It's not just like you need to do this, and it's like, well, you need to do this and this, and then you've got this enormous scope to be creative or whatever. And even I'm exhausted watching, people say, oh, we'll make this part of the picture, we'll mask it here, and then we'll just, play with the color just in this little bit of the picture. I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted just watching that. But yeah, it is a fascinating topic. And like I know you use Final Cut Pro, but I've switched over to DaVinci Resolve, and it's such an amazing piece of software, but boy, it's so complicated, but yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good bit of kit, DaVinci, definitely, and free as well. There's a lot you can do with the free version.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's good.
Absolutely.
It's good. Definitely, folks. If you're thinking about doing a bit of video editing, you're not sure what software to use, DaVinci Resolve, it's called. That's a good place to certainly start for 10, and that's available on both platforms, Windows and Mac. Final Cut you can only use on a Mac, so.
And I've been actually working through the training. They've got some really good free training. So it teaches you through a project-based training to do the editing, to do introduction to color correction, to grading, sound, and fusion, which is the 3D graphics or the 2D graphics. So it's all free. It's all free. You don't need to spend a dime, and you can teach yourself really quite advanced basics of how to use the tool. It's amazing.
Beautiful. Happy days. Andy's second question. With the explosion of high quality kit at reasonable prices to allow bikers to video themselves and their journey, what skill do you wish was as easily available for the masses?
I think people need to understand. I think it would be good if people did a little bit of analysis on the language of cinema. So I'm not very good at explaining this. I've tried a couple of times with various guests, and I probably need to make this a little more precise. But, what we're doing now is very natural. Right? I'm talking, you're listening, you're talking, sometimes I'm listening. Mm-hmm. That's a very simple interaction. And if you are listening to it as an audio podcast, it's pretty simple. Two voices, one, then the other, blah, blah, blah. But when you watch like a sophisticated film, shall we say, the range, the variety of different shots that are used to tell a story. You might have like a long, a wide angle shot to establish the scene, and then you have medium close-ups and then close-ups, and these shots are taken from specific positions, and in a certain sequence, and it's following a visual language that we've all grown up with. So when we watch television, we kind of, without even thinking about it or the cinema, we're sort of following along what's going on with a language, a visual language that we're used to, that we've just seems completely natural to us. And there is a film that I refer to, and I should have written it down because I'm gonna forget the name of it. It's a German film by a British director. It came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it doesn't follow those conventions. And as a viewer, it's quite strange to watch. So what it does is it basically sets a camera up, and then the action goes on all around, like in a room. It doesn't show cuts to people's faces, to the expression, to what their hands are doing, which is what we see usually when we're watching a film. And it doesn't follow that convention, visual conventions that we've grown up with in television and filmmaking. And it's actually done deliberately to kind of make you a little bit uncomfortable. So what as new filmmakers, I think it's very important to be aware of that language, those conventions. They talk about the rule where the camera should always be on one side of that this should be, if you've got two people talking to each other, the camera can only sort of be from one side or the other, and if it goes to the sort of 180 degrees over to the other side, it suddenly makes you completely disoriented as a viewer. Again, I'm not explaining this very well, but again, these are conventions that have grown up in filmmaking. You probably do them naturally just because you've grown up in this same language of filmmaking and cinematography, but being made aware of these things and the sequence of shots and things like that, I think a lot of new filmmakers would realize they actually need to follow a lot of those conventions, because if they don't, viewers will quickly get bored. The eye will very quickly get bored because we're used to that way, those conventions being employed. And if they're not, we get bored very quickly. I mean, we've all seen those videos of someone they've got a GoPro, they're so excited, they go out on the trails in the UK and they have a 5-minute video and it's just front of, point of view. And sure, there's a place for that. But often as a new filmmaker, you try and make that kind of a video and you think, oh, it records exactly what I saw. But as a viewing experience, it often is not very interesting. You need to bring in edited elements. You need different perspectives. You need to be varying it. Otherwise, the eye just gets bored really quickly.
Yeah.
So I think learning some basics around those conventions, or just becoming aware of them. I think we know them, but we're just maybe not consciously aware of them. I think becoming aware of those conventions and employing them will make new filmmakers, particularly new amateur filmmakers who've had no training, their stuff will be more interesting if they take that seriously, I think.
Yeah. I think it depends what media what platform are you looking at your content going on? Are you looking at this being a film to be shown on a big screen, or are you looking for like a traditional TV style piece of content, or is it going to be more YouTube, social media based? Who's your audience as well? What sort of content is your audience used to watching? Because I certainly find people of our generation and older who've grown up with traditional television content, when you look at, certainly I would say 5 to 10 years ago, maybe just over 5 years ago, say, when you started looking at YouTube content that was rising and rapidly becoming very, very popular, it was all jump cuts. And it was like, it's no wonder everyone's got bloody ADHD these days, because when you look at the content that you get thrown, I'm as guilty as anyone because I use the jump cut all the time now. But the content was just like change. And it went from 5 to 7 seconds, no more, don't hold it for any longer, to like half a second. They were reducing it down to that, which is just insane. Or there was never to be the same real estate on the screen for longer than a second, is what they were saying. So even if all you do is just bring in a graphic or pop up a bit of text, that's what they were doing on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that was holding people's attention span. But it's actually flipped now. And a lot of the big YouTubers are going back to basics. And they're, you tend to find they're starting to bring in some of the traditional cinematography, some of the traditional filmmaking values. They're starting to bring them in. Their content's gone from 15 minutes to 45 minutes, an hour. Mr. Beast, who was the main instigator of all this, he grew on content that was just bang, 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 bang. He's now making much longer form content. That's probably because he's getting a little bit older. His audience is maturing. And I think you need to push the boundaries a little bit. You need to be different. You need to set, what sets you apart from everyone else. So I think where everyone's gone to this short form, ADHD, blah, 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 those who are going for that longer form, traditional form content, it's almost like there's a different perceived level there, I think.
And there's definitely, there are different audiences and individuals also at different times need or want different things. I'm very much aware of that. So, I want to be respectful of everyone who's making things out there, because I sort of know what my taste is, but I also know that other people have other tastes. And I think that's very important to realize. Otherwise you become just a snob and go, oh no, this is shit. And it's like, well, no, other people like it, and maybe take that seriously and understand, why do other people like it? And maybe, for example, you've ridden a trail, or you're going to ride a particular trail, and you want to know exactly what's going to happen. Other people go, I want to be entertained in a sort of a cinematic way, or I really enjoy the chat that's being recorded while this ride's happening. So there's all different ways of appreciating or different things that different people at different times are going to like about that. And I think I think I've been reasonably careful not to be too opinionated about stuff, and just to appreciate that different people like different things, and that's to be respected. I think, as I was saying right at the beginning, a lot of my journey is about trying to figure out what I like.
Yeah.
And recognizing that, and also recognizing that my taste changes. Like at one stage I was thinking it has to have a voiceover. If it hasn't got a deep, meaningful voiceover, I'm not going to like it. And then realizing I'm really enjoying this film because it's just the visuals. There's no one talking. It's great. I love it. So I recognize that my tastes are changing over time, or at different times I like different things. And so just like, don't be too judgmental. Just enjoy, respect what people are doing, respect that people are doing different things for different reasons, and at different times people are enjoying it for whatever, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's kind of important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers for that, Andy. Right, you've got a last one, actually. Bruce, one for you. What skill do you have now you wish you had when you went round the world? Have a good one. Cheers, Andy. If I ever do see any of the world trip footage, any of the vids on that, I'm not just saying that because you're here, Simon. Sound. I had zero knowledge or awareness of sound. So my audio peaks in some places. And by peak, it's like, if you imagine you've put the mic right up to your voice, all of a sudden it sounds all distorted. So when you speak loud, it distorts out, or it would be too quiet. I would use music, and I had no idea that you're supposed to lower the volume of the music. So like my talking might be at, I don't know, let's just say -6 decibels, which is sort of a standard really, isn't it? Kind of roughly. Well, then the music might come in and the music might be 0 decibels or 2 decibels, so it's just bah. You might notice that when you're watching the TV, folks, adverts come on and all of a sudden they're bloody loud. But a lot of the time that's intentional. They do that to make the adverts stand out, But it's annoying, isn't it? Because you're used to a a sort of a medium level. You're used to a baseline level when you're watching something. So I made that mistake loads, and I didn't really become aware of that till about, I would say, 2018, 2019. So I produced a lot of videos before I actually realised, they call it normalize, normalize your audio. So yeah, I would say pay attention to your sound for sure. And I would love to do that trip again anyway, for sure.
Yeah, sound. I think my last guest on the podcast is a sound engineer who works in Australian sound commercials, all sorts of things. He used to work at the ABC. Brilliant guest. And we were talking about the fact that if you've had no training, pretty much anyone can pick up a camera and see what you get. You see what you get. But sound, the way microphones behave and work, no. They're just, you can't just put a microphone in a room near a person and think you're going to get good sound. The microphones do not work that way, and different microphones work completely differently. And of course, I'm a bit precious about it, but it is a big topic, and everyone I talk to says, sound's always the tricky part to master. Yeah,
and it's. I don't think everybody out there has the ear for sound the way some people, clearly you do, because when you speak to people who are passionate about sound and they work in the sound environment, I mean, they are so attuned to sound. Like, they'll listen to a piece of content and go, oh yeah, well, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. Joe Bloggs listens to it and goes, seems all right to me, seems fine to me. But when you make those changes, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, that's loads better. But I wouldn't be able to pick them out, I don't think, what needs to be done.
A friend of mine pointed out that actually the good sound makes a difference in a poor listening environment. So if you're, a lot of us have noise-cancelling headphones now, which helps a lot. But if you're on public transport, on a bus or whatever, or on a train, which is maybe quite a noisier environment, when the sound is not good in those situations, you really struggle to hear. So even though it's not like a hi-fi listening situation, the fact that someone's done certain things to make the sound good, typically equalization and compression, to balance the difference between the loudest parts and the quietest parts, that makes a difference for someone who's listening in a poor listening environment. And of course it helps in a good listening environment as well. But that's actually something that's maybe not so obvious, but good sound treatment's important in those bad listening environments.
There's a lot to it, isn't there? It's not just point the camera, have the mic there. Yeah,
definitely.
Cheers for those questions, Andy. Next one, last one on the clan. Michael Heaton. Hi, guys. Happy New Year. Simon, as a judge for the film festival, will you be the Simon Cowell or Amanda Holden style of judge?
Well, I know Simon Cowell. I don't know Amanda Holden, but Michael, I know where you're coming from with this one. I can be a bit contrary. I don't think I'm brutal in the way, or should I say, with regards to our judging panel, I haven't been the only one who's made some brutal comments about some of the films. Let's just say our mutual friend Noel Tom's probably more the Amanda. Was it Amanda Holden? Was that? Yeah.
Was he the eye candy? Is he? I don't think Noel's ever been called eye candy.
Oh, he'd love it. That
he would.
Yeah,
he would. Yeah, absolutely. I might do that next time I see you. Call him Amanda. So, can you tell people what is the film festival then? What's it all about?
Okay, so the inaugural Adventure Motorcycle Film Festival is a film festival which we're running on the 28th of February in Kendall in the Lake District. It's a one afternoon night event. Obviously the first time we're running it. It's a joint production of my podcast and the Trail and Adventure Motorcycle Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. So that's, well, it's Clive, previously Noel, and Noel's no longer a co-host if you know your podcasts, people. But he's also still involved with the film festival. So we decided to do an adventure motorcycle film festival rather than a motorcycle film festival. We thought we would narrow the field a little bit, which is fine. I mean, we now have the London Motorcycle Film Festival, and then, around the world, you have the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival, you have the Lisbon Motorcycle Film Fest. I believe there's one in Portland as well, in the US. We launched it in about July, I think, from memory, and entries for the festival closed on the 31st of December. We've had over 50 entries, which we're very happy about. I mean, I spoke to the director of the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival, and he said they typically get between 30 and 60 films every year to judge. So we had over 50 entries, so we're pretty thrilled with that.
Yeah.
We've just finished the judging. We've just finished the lineup for the night or the day. It's actually quite a long day, and we're structuring it into blocks. So there's lots of generous breaks, because who's going to want to sit and watch any sort of film for 8 hours? So it's not going to be 8 hours of solid films. There's going to be some healthy breaks. Mixture of short films and feature films. There's about a 2-to-1 ratio of shorts to feature films in the program. We have sold out the theatre, so we've sold out more than it's completely sold out now. There's over, I think there's something just over 220 tickets for the venue.
Awesome.
So we've done that. We've got a couple of well-known supporters who it looks like they're going to be putting on. They're going to have little pop-up displays there. So Adventure Spec is one of the big ones, and Mitas Tires. So people have probably heard of those. Plus, there's also a motorcycle sort of lifestyle cafe outlet called Ethos, I think in the northeast. So I don't know my geography very well, but they're also one of our supporters. What else? So we're just about to notify the directors about the results, and building. We're now going to prepare for the big technical phase, preparing the films for the evening. It's become almost a bit of a full-time job for me over the last few weeks, and I expect we've still got quite a bit of work to do between now. But I think we're feeling very happy about the program and the entries. Obviously very happy about the fact that it's sold out. And we are looking long term in the sense that this is the first one. We're talking already about next year. We're very much walking before we run. But we're feeling pretty good about things at the moment, even though there's a lot of work to do.
Awesome. So how's the format going to work then? Obviously, you're prejudging, so you're already going to have decided who the winners are going to be. Is it split into different?
Yeah. So we have 4 prizes. So the best short film, so that's up to 30 minutes. Best feature film, so that's over 30 minutes. Best film overall. And then for the attendees in the audience on the night, they get to choose a People's Choice Award.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
And that's quite similar to like the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival, which I was lucky enough to go to in 2024. So I'm quite familiar with their format. They do it over 2 nights, and I believe the London Motorcycle Film Festival was over 2 nights as well. We've done it over 1 day. We will be having a big post-mortem afterwards to figure out what worked well, what didn't work well, what we might want to change. But that's the format. And like I say, we have lots of breaks so that people won't get too bored, hopefully. And there's a bar on it's been held at the Brewery Arts Centre.
Sold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all the tickets are already sold out then?
They are. They are.
Okay. But if people want to find out a little bit more about it, I'm assuming there's a website, socials, things like that?
There is a website. The website's www.advmotofilmfest.com.
Gotcha.
And that's
links down below.
Yeah, links down below. And there's also an Instagram account as well, which I think is ADV Motor Film Fest as well. But I'd have to check that. But yeah, we'll get you to put it in the links down below.
I'll find all them folks. I'll chuck them down below. I'll chuck them downstairs. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope that goes well. That's really interesting. That's got a lot of potential.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're very happy with how things are looking at the moment, but we just got to deliver on the night. But all the fundamentals are there in terms of we've got an audience, we've had lots of films come in, and I think we've got some good films to show.
You've got a bar, Simon. You've got a bar. It's you're on a winner. It's a win-win straight away. Yeah. And dry January will have finished by that time as well. There you go. So you can have one beer, fall over.
Well, that's probably, because I'm...
Start telling people what you really think of their films.
That might be why I didn't have a beer tonight secretly as well. You're like, oh, bloody hell. Yeah, I may not have that one beer until the festival's finished because I'll probably be somewhat stressed building up. And on the night or the day the night, and then afterwards, once it's a success, I'll relax and have a beer then and fall over, as you say.
Oh, I'm sure it will be, mate. I'm sure it will be. Awesome. Right, but that's us. We've done the questions, and we are 2 hours, 43 minutes into this so far. Mind you, it'll be a wee bit less because we had a wee bit at the beginning, which won't be included. But yeah, how does that feel? 2.5 hour chat.
If there's anyone still listening, good on you. I mean, I don't know what my voice sounds like now. Yeah. Anyway. No, but
is there anything?
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to cover? Anything you want to chat about that we haven't so far?
Well, I think the main thing was to talk about the film festival. It's good that you brought that up at the end, even though it's not promotion now but just be aware of it, people, because we want to make it. We are thinking long term. We're already talking next year, so hopefully build that into quite a thing, quite an event over time. So yeah, I think I don't know what else we talked about. Podcasting, we talked about motorcycling, talked about my family history and my travel. I mean, I never. It's not exactly the life I've planned, but. When you came on the podcast, on my podcast, Bruce, I asked you, were you scared of regrets? And that was kind of a very personal question for me because I'm a little bit, because you said, that resonates. Well, that resonates for me as well. I'm really pleased that I left New Zealand, even though I love New Zealand. I have kind of lived the life I wanted to. I'm not just traveling overseas, but working overseas, putting roots down for 2 or 3, 4, 5, 11 years in places and really get a feeling for those places. So I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to do that. And Germany's just the most recent part of that. And who knows what will happen next. But yeah, it is kind of a life that I'm pleased I've lived. The work not necessarily always been that interesting, but the life is, just the life has been interesting. I think that's how I would sum up things to date for me, for sure.
I think as we get a bit older, you realise. Well, maybe not even as you get older, maybe you've always been aware, but work isn't everything. Life, living is not about work. Is it, work allows you to live, and it's this whole podcast, live your life, it's look after those that you love, but live your life. We only get one chance that we know of.
Yeah.
Make the most of it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Absolutely.
In that sense, what else is out there then that you've not done that you fancy? Or places you've not been to that maybe you fancy?
I've never been to South America. I've been to Mexico. I've never been to South America. Europe is now quite close. So we've been to quite a few places in Europe, and we'll do more of that, and that's easy now that we're here. I haven't been to Africa either. I don't know. I'm not so. It's not that I'm disinterested in travel. I'm very keen on making things. It sort of dawned on me quite a while ago that what I want to do with my time is to make things, and actually to make things with people, like to collaborate. That's why I'm really excited about these film projects.
Yeah.
Last year, I did a special episode with the mental health motorbike people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's probably the most satisfying podcast I've ever made. Took 6 weeks to make, 6.5 hours, probably longer than 6 weeks, 6.5 hours of raw recordings edited down to a 45-minute episode. Had to create all the music for that, had to coach them. They'd never made a podcast before. So making things with other people is actually what I really like doing, and I want to do more of, whether it's podcasts, films, just get out and make stuff. I think get out, create, make stuff. That's very much where my focus is at the moment.
Awesome. All right, well, folks, make sure you check out the Real Riders podcast. There'll be links down below. You only do it on audio, don't you? You don't do the video style.
I've done a couple of video, but not for me. Like I haven't published the video, and
Right.
and I'm not about to start doing that because it's just for me it's too hard. I prefer the audio. In some ways, I find the audio easier. I can clean myself up so I seem half competent and half intelligent. I mean,
You're very self-critical,
this.
mate. You don't need to be.
Well, anyone who's watched this for 2 hours and 48 minutes or whatever it is, they're just going to like, oh, God, please don't do video, Simon. It's just going to be painful. Yeah.
Mate, you've been way too harsh on yourself. You really are. But folks, check out the links down below, because I'll leave the links to the Real Riders podcast there. I'll leave the links to the film festival. They'll all be down there. So make sure you check them out. See if it's your cup of tea. Simon, thank you very much for coming on, mate. Really appreciate you giving me almost 3 hours of your evening.
Well, thank you, Bruce. As we both know, finding, I wouldn't say talent, but guests to come on the podcast, I just wanted to make it as easy as possible. But no, thank you very much. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I've enjoyed it. And sorry if I talk too much.
No, likewise, mate. Likewise. It's been great having you on. I really enjoyed the chat that I had on your podcast, and it's been great to find out a little bit more about you here on Bru Time. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Right, folks, that's us. Hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, make sure you give it a thumbs up, a like, tell your mates about it, share it. It really does help, honestly. Liking, commenting, sharing has a huge impact on analytics and how whatever platform, whether it's YouTube or the podcast audio platforms, that has a big impact on how it then distributes it and chucks it out to new viewers and listeners. So much appreciated if you do that. All right, folks, keep doing your thing. Get on out there whenever you can. Look after those that you love. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ah! See you in the next one.